Hello, thank you for joining us today for the 31st meeting of the Board of Lake County Commissioners. This August 5th. Would all those who are willing and able please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Grant us, O Lord, light to our understanding, prudence in our investigating, foresight in our planning, sincerity in our deliberating, the grace to follow truth in our judgment. Help us to be moved in our decision, neither by fear nor by self-interest, and to do our work faithfully. May we respect the authority vested in us, for Thou art the source of all authority, and may we use in our directives for the common good and for Thy honor and glory. Amen. Amen. Thank you all. Okay, in the first public comment portion, we do have a guest here with us today, John Adams. He is the administrator for the Bureau of Adult Detention for the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections. John was kind enough to join us here a few weeks ago to talk some technical discussions with us regarding our Lake County Jail. He's kind enough to come back with us virtually. He is currently working on that $50 million. I understand you're going through scoring those. Hopefully we will score well on that. There's a little commercial I'll put in for that. John, thank you for joining us today. We also have with us our telecommunications director, Paul Stefanko, and our director for buildings and grounds, Mark I. Felice. And if I could ask you folks, do you mind if we swap out so we can kind of get everybody on the appropriate camera, and as we do the chair shuffle? I'm not
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
To the extent we may get into discussions and deliberations, perhaps we should have roll call.
You know, I'm jumping in too quick. Thank you, legal. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young. Here. Commissioner Plechnik.
Present.
Commissioner Hamertek.
Here. Dave, thank you so much. See, that's why you always have a good attorney watching your back. Okay, and with that, John, can you hear me okay? Just so we can do a quick comm check. We're good?
Yeah, the audio levels are a little low and they're a little choppy, but I can make out what you're saying, yes.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Okay, well, thanks for coming back. We just, maybe just to define a few things. Your agency, I think the baseball analogy was a good one, where you pretty much you call balls and strikes. You're not there to call the play or tell the pitcher what pitch to throw. Is that a good way to characterize what you guys do?
Yes, I don't disagree with that.
Okay, and there was a gentleman, Joel. I'm terrible with last names, but as I understand, you are Joel's boss's boss. So whatever Joel says, you're pretty high in the food chain there. Is that a reasonable statement?
Yeah. Joel's one of our frontline jail inspectors. The way the Bureau is currently set up, we have 9 jail inspector positions, and those jail inspectors report to one of 2 supervisors. We have 2 supervisors in the state, and then both those supervisors report to me, so yes.
Okay, and again, I know we're going a little review here, but the jail reports on individual facilities, when you were here, and I can appreciate you're being reluctant to talk about any one specific facility without one having benefit of the document in front of you, but each report is unique to a facility, and a casual reading of a highly technical document could be easily misunderstood. Is that a...
Yeah, that's probably a fair assessment. I will say that a report is individualized for each jail. The jail that's the subject of the report, that report is made for that specific jail, and it's really difficult, even when you're looking at compliant issues or non-compliant issues, to compare one jail's performance to another jail's performance, because there are different ways in which a jail can show compliance, and there's different ways in which a jail can be non-compliant also.
And just, again, making sure that we're all on the same page, and I also like to say on the same page in the same book. Trying to compare one report to another report is at best difficult because, again, those uniqueness factors, and just because something's included in one document and not included in another is not an indicator of a pass-fail. It's just an indicator of what was seen or captured when that inspection took place. Is that a reasonable
That is true. We always say that an inspection is a 1 day, or maybe in some cases a multiple day snapshot of the jail operations as witnessed by our inspectors when they were present on site.
And when you, speaking of snapshots, we have with us Director Stefanko, Director Iafalise. They are our frontline, I call them our subject matter experts. I think you referred to them as our staff experts when you were here, which we're fortunate to have. I know, Paul, you came on board, what, about 1985, 86, somewhere in there? That's I call that a good long. Paul used to be my boss, by the way, in the telecom department. So he's got that history. I know you were here when they broke ground for that jail. I know the telecom department did a lot of work to help finish fitting out that building. But that comment about that snapshot in time. If while we've got our local experts, our staff experts here, when there is something that comes up, a pipe breaks, a circuit fails, some system goes down, whichever one of you wants to field this, that gets reported, the appropriate staff member or contractor is notified, and that's taken care of in as timely a manner as possible. Did either of you or both of you want to comment on that?
Whenever there's a problem.
Microphone, please, thank you. Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Whenever there's a problem in the jail, there's a work order, the jail on our work order program, which is facility due, will send that work order in to us. And Paul has another one called assets. That's under facility due too, and they get their work orders. And then we act as soon as we get those work orders. We get them on our iPhones, we get them in. So as soon as we see that and we look at our email and it shows us that work order, then we call the appropriate people in to do the work.
And that can be within minutes, within hours, within days, weeks, months, years. How quickly do you get to those things? Just a little bit of
If it's during the work time, it's probably within an hour. After hours, it could take longer in case we have to call a contractor in.
But if it's something that's, and this goes to the state, if it's something that's actually impacting a cell, and say a sprinkler head fails for whatever reason, we'll just leave it at that, and there's water getting on an inmate, that would be something that the state would be interested in. But how we handled that is something that would be addressed. And as long as everybody is healthy and dry and safe, regardless of how that sprinkler head failed, if you guys want to, because I know that's a real thing.
Yes, and it's kind of funny that you mention that. Sunday at 11:20 p.m., I got a call from the jail. When they have a problem after hours, they have my cell phone number, and my cell phone is with me all the time, and they have zero problem calling me whenever they have a problem, and Mark as well. But this particular time, last Sunday at 11:20 p.m., they called me because, and I don't want to be crude here, but there was raw sewage coming up through the shower drains. So they called me, and I was very happy to inform them that wasn't my problem, that was Mark's problem. So I called Mark and I said, "Mark, you've got a problem." So Mark can tell you what he did from then, and then I'd like to pick up after Mark tells you what he did after I called him.
Okay. So then after I got the call from Paul, I called my assistant who got a hold of our plumber. He got called in, and he worked on what it was a blanket. After he had worked on it, a blanket and multiple clothings were flushed down the fixture, say. So he worked on that for, I'd say, 4 hours. He couldn't get it. So next morning when everybody came in, he went home. We had 2 personnel work on that for the rest of the day, the following day, and they couldn't clear it. So we called in a sewer company that came in, and eventually they got it. We were afraid that we were going to have to knock some walls out and actually cut the pipe out to get that debris out of there, to get it to flow.
And John, I assume you could hear all that reasonably well?
Yeah, I could hear reasonably well. They had a plumbing problem. it resulted in the backup of sewage, and they found a blanket that took them a little while to get out of the lines.
So if one of your inspectors was present when this was going on, that would potentially be something noted, but since it did not take place in front of one of your inspectors, that's not something that it's a mandatory report. It's not like a nuclear power plant where you have a mandatory report.
You are correct. That's not something that the jail's required to report to us. However, if it occurred in front of our inspector might watch to see what was happening. But the mere fact that the jail, there's a standard that requires the jail to perform regular maintenance, and the mere fact that they're responding to it and attempting to resolve it, it would not be an issue of non-compliance because the jail is working to resolve the issue.
Very good. Anything else you want to add, sir?
If I could also, Telcom, my department, is responsible for the doors, locks, windows, intercom, phone, paging, card readers, cameras, recorders, monitors, control panels, lights, and alarms. As Mark mentioned, we have a separate reporting system called Asset Essentials, and we do get reports the same way Mark does. In addition, Telcom has 2 full-time, at times 3 full-time employees that are in the jail all day, every day, because of the things that break and the things that need to be repaired. The jail, the Lake County Jail, has more personnel committed to it full-time and even part-time than any of the other county buildings combined. So all the county offices that we have and all the buildings that we have, the jail requires more maintenance than all of those buildings combined. We do respond at times within 15 minutes to repair problems. Most of the time when there's a problem, it's fixed before the guys go home. Every morning when they show up for work, there is a list of things that happened the day before that need to be repaired, and I would say at least 95% of the time they're fixed before they go home.
And just to be abundantly clear to anyone involved in this conversation or viewing this in the future, at no time do we leave anything unattended that is compromising the health and safety of an inmate. That is a priority for us.
That is correct.
Absolutely. Tools and any equipment is monitored and locked when it's not directly in our hands, and it's not left out ever.
Very good. And Commissioner Young, I believe you had something you wanted to ask or say?
Yeah, I'd like to. Welcome.
Oh,
John.
your microphone, sir. Thank you. Yeah.
Welcome, John. How you doing? John, you there? Hello? Everything all right on your end?
Yes.
I didn't expect you today, but it's good to see you. When it comes to the jail inspections do have some meaning, don't they?
They have some.
They have some meaning, right?
Oh yeah. Jail inspectors or jail inspections, I think, are very meaningful.
What meaning? What do they add to the equation as far as
Jail inspections are an overall assessment of a jail's operation. It tells how they perform operationally, and it can give an indicator or a evaluation of the quality of life for the inmates, the quality of the building for the staff and inmates alike. It does not go into structural issues. It's
Right.
the quality of the operations and the overall quality of life for the inmates.
So at this point, as I read through the report for Lake County, it's perfect. In every way, operationally, in your context, the jail meets the standards.
I would say that a inspection is a report of the standards that were inspected. And on the standards that were inspected, it does appear that the Lake County Jail has performed well in the past several years. They pass their inspections every year. The word perfect is a strong word, and it's not a total assessment of everything that's happening in the jail. And I think that's important to note. What this is an assessment of a certain set of standards, a certain number of standards that total over 100 in the case of like probably the 16, 17, 18, and 19 inspections. And the Lake County Jail did well. They passed their inspection. Some of the years, I believe that they didn't miss a standard.
So in every year then, most years at any rate, and perfect, I agree. Perfect is a very strong word. I shouldn't have used that. But the Lake County Jail is indeed meeting the standards as far as the state is concerned at this point, the standards that are measured. Is that accurate?
The Lake County Jail is in compliance with the standards. I haven't looked at I didn't look at the 2020 inspection, but like I think on the 19 inspection, they might have dropped a standard. However, they could have picked it up in after action. I didn't look to see if there was a final report completed for that year, but I believe that they've been compliant. Every year I looked at, they were compliant. I looked at 3 or 4 of the preceding years, not to include 20. I went back from 2019 and went back several years, and it looked like they were compliant in those years.
And of course, you folks are not looking at the structure of the building itself.
Correct.
But if go ahead.
There are a few things, Commissioner Young, that we do look at. We look to ensure that you have a secure perimeter. So as we're going through doors and locks, we do look to see if doors and locks are functioning. We don't check every single lock in the building. We don't check every single door in the building. But we look at the ones that we do see, and we report on that. That might catch some structural stuff, but it's not a structural assessment. It's done for security reasons, not structural reasons.
Yeah. If indeed the door, the locks on the prisoner's cells are not operational, and a prisoner leans against their cell door and it simply falls open, even when it's supposed to be locked and they have access to the hallway, is that something that would be of some concern to the state? Or doesn't that even, the prisoners being able to walk the hallways at their leisure, is that a concern?
Anytime an inmate can cross a secure barrier, whether it's their cell door or a block door to the cell blocks, it would cause us concern. It could cause an issue of compliance with the standards. It just all depends the circumstances under which it happened, and was there was it a faulty lock, or was it through the actions of the offender that they were able to circumvent the locking mechanism?
Yeah.
I mean, there's multiple factors that would come into it, but the short answer is yes, that could be a concern to us. It would be a concern to us. It's just whether it would result in an issue of non-compliance or not. We would have to investigate each situation to see if there was an issue of non-compliance or whether it could be attributed to something else.
We've been told there have been problems with the locks on the doors in the jail. They're getting old and difficult to replace parts. And of course, you can't predict when a lock might go bad. That's probably very difficult. If you can't buy new ones, then it creates a very difficult situation. What about cells where there's been a great deal of leakage? Because we have a problem with the roof, apparently. Or we do have a problem with the roof. It leaks a lot. And these are showers that aren't planned by the prisoners. So their cells get very, very wet. And they have to move them from cell to cell, I guess, on a fairly regular basis because of the leaky roof. Is that something that the state inspectors might possibly have an interest in?
They may notice it. It all depends, and I'm sorry, I don't know. I was having trouble hearing you there. I think you're asking about if showers were faulty or if there was some leakage into the cells from roof leakage and stuff like that. If the inspectors notice those things, that they will ask about them. Sometimes if a matter's already been remedied and the ceiling's already been, or the roof has already been fixed, and they see stains in the ceiling, that may or may not trip them to investigate further. If they see water running down the wall, they're going to check on it. But sometimes when you get into just seeing residual water stains, you don't know whether they're current or whether they're older. It may go into other areas of an inspection where routine maintenance and we maybe address it, might address it through there, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to think here as I go. But on the showers also, if showers aren't working, jail inspectors, they may not turn on every single shower, but as part of their inspection, they typically will go in and test the sampling of the showers, the sampling of the toilets, sampling of the sinks. I've actually observed them walk into cells, ask the jailers or the correction officers to have access to a cell so they can go in and personally flush the toilet. I've seen them go to cell doors. I've done it myself and asked the inmate to step up and flush his toilet and turn on his water to ensure that it works. So they test the sampling, but they don't check every one. When they find fixtures that don't operate correctly, yes, that can lead to non-compliance depending on the number. Sometimes if a jail has already submitted a work order,
sure,
and they can show us the work order and it's recent and the county just is in the process of addressing it, we may not find non-compliance if it's in the process of being addressed. But if the work order's been outstanding for a period of time that we feel is unacceptable, we very well may find the jail in non-compliance.
Right, I see. Yeah, you couldn't be expected to check every lock. Whenever you'd have to have an army of inspectors coming out every other day or so to handle all that. And as far as the exterior of the building is concerned, bricks falling off of it, that really wouldn't be in your bailiwick either, I wouldn't think, right?
Yeah, bricks falling off the building. Once again, if it occurred while we were there, especially a building as large as yours, it may not be noticed. I know that they had some problem with the facade that they detailed the last time we were at the meeting, and an issue like that, we may not notice bowing, depending on the severity of the bowing. We may or may not notice it. The jail inspectors do take an overall view of the jail, but it's little things like that. Major problems can have very little symptoms. And when I say very little, I truly mean very minute symptoms.
Right.
A major problem could have very minute symptoms that we may not see because that's not what we do. Our expertise is not in structural assessments. Our expertise is in operational assessments of the jails.
Yeah. As far as the maintenance of a jail is concerned, the daily maintenance, does a jail generally require a bit more attention, if you will, from maintenance teams, or is a jail just like any other building? It's, whether it has more locks and maybe there's more people in it that would be willing to cause damage periodically, and
a jail is very similar. A jail is very similar to your vehicle. The older they get, the more maintenance they require.
Right.
The harder they're operated, the more maintenance they require. We have, newer jails that require very little maintenance, and I would guess that most of the maintenance is, lubricating things that need lubricating and cleaning up and tidying up and cleaning gunk out of locks. Where when you get into older jails, you start to see structural failures as far as locks breaking. And it's not just an issue of something won't slide anymore. It's an issue that the track rusted off, or a bolt broke, or that's just the nature of jails and buildings as a whole. It's no different than probably your county commissioner's building. It's very nice. I walked in it and I was very impressed with not only the cleanliness of it, but just the design. It was a very nice building, but 30 years down the road, 40 years down the road, it probably will have more and more issues creeping up for you.
I see, sure. So jails are just like any other building. It doesn't, the nature of the folks who live there or that sort of thing doesn't have an impact on it.
The consequences of failure are a little more severe than most buildings. So we don't want the structure failing. We don't want the security measures failing because the consequences are so high.
Yeah.
However, they're similar to other buildings. They just have higher consequences associated with their failure.
Yeah. So there probably would be a bit more focus on quick maintenance, on getting things done quickly if there's a problem, particularly something that could impact the safety either of the prisoners or the public around the jail if someone escaped or something of that nature. Is that true? There might be a bit more maintenance for those reasons, or?
I missed the middle part. I will tell you that I think the quicker that maintenance can be made and repairs can be made, that it does keep problems from getting worse. But I think there's a benefit to being attentive to the problems of a building,
Yeah.
or a jail specifically. And the more attentive you are to the problems, the less chance they get out of hand. But there are some things that they just don't give an indicator until they fail.
Right. In reference to the situation just east of us with Ashtabula, I understand they actually pointed out problems.
I wasn't at the inspection. I'm not aware of what they
Yeah.
might have done or what they might not have done.
That's what I was told by our staff here, that they pointed out the specific problem, some of the problems they were having to your inspectors, and that's probably where the some of the stuff that Commissioner Hammercheck is referencing comes from, because your folks did a lot of work on pointing out problems with the layout of the building and the age of the building, and that they had become a problem to the operations of the building itself. Whereas here, we get things done quick. If there's a problem, we're all over it. We have great staff here, hardworking people that just make it happen. I think Ashtabula has an older building, even much older than ours, I believe. And they probably needed something done even sooner than it was done. So I appreciate the fact that your staff interacted so well with the folks out in Ashtabula when they started reporting issues to them, and they took a close look at those issues and agreed that a major overhaul had to be done. In that case, they're building a new jail. At any rate, that's it for me. I appreciate your joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
John, if we could just take a moment while we've got you here.
Sure.
Again, talking about your scope of work, your area of responsibility. Your area of responsibility really falls in reviewing policies, procedures, staff, the education of the staff. It's not in the area of plumbing, electrical, heating, cooling, and ventilation, roofing, brickwork conditions, windows.
You are correct.
Okay. Again, we also need to make a distinction between scope of an inspection and scope of an engineering review. They are two very different things.
Yes.
Overwhelmingly, you, the people under your charge, work with our sheriff and the people under his charge at this facility. When we're talking about the jail, overwhelmingly we're talking about the people who are housed in the jail, the people who work in the jail, and how they perform those services. So when we use the blanket statement jail, that may be lending to some of the confusion. When we talk about the jail globally, we're really talking about the people. Is that reasonable? And we need
Yes, and I would expand that maybe even a little bit to say the people and operations.
Well said.
Yeah, it is not about the structure. There may be some structure things that we look at, but it's because they overlap with security. It's not because we're reviewing the structure of the jail.
Perfect. No, that's fair, because one of the things that I'm looking at is end of service life of any of the systems, the equipment, any of the apparatus. That's not in your scope of work, because we're talking structural. When we're talking anything structural, you're not going to look at the sticker that says, hey, this thing has a 30-year life. You're at 35 years. You're 5 years past. Okay,
You are correct.
Okay, I apologize. I'm literally checking things off as I go here, and I appreciate your adding to the conversation the consequences of failure. The consequences of failure in this building, we may disappoint somebody because they can't come into the building to pay a utility bill. This is not an occupied structure, our new administration building. The jail, the building, the facility is occupied by inmates and staff 24/7. That's a facility that even if there is a failure of some kind, we have to have preparedness plans, and I know the sheriff is in attendance, so if I say something that's not accurate, I hope you'll correct me, sir. There are preparedness plans to move inmates around, staff around, deploy assets to make sure that all of the mandated standards are maintained in a reasonable manner. We have, and I'm going to keep saying experts, our own staff experts who have been here through the life of this building that respond in beyond a timely manner. In private industry, you get to something in 24, 48 hours, you're considered good. When you're getting to it in 15 minutes, that's unheard of. And I've personally seen the reports and witnessed responses in minutes. That's a true recognition of the consequence of failure. Because I'm just going to come right out and say it. The consequence of failure is high because people could die. I know we talk about potential litigation. I know we talk about, well, what happens if somebody's having a bad day and they sue us? Well, you know what? If somebody winds up dead because something failed, because somebody was able to kick a door, shatter a lock, and gain access in an unanticipated, unexpected manner, that's a consequence that I'm reticent to have to deal with. So if we can do the right thing and be on top of this before it fails, I think that's the responsible thing to do. And I do believe your organization is big on being proactive. That's where training comes in, and making sure that training is current and up to date and relevant. Is that a reasonable statement?
Yes, we are concerned about the day-to-day training of staff. We want to make sure that we are putting properly trained staff when we assign them to their duties, and we want to make sure that recurring training is occurring each year to top that knowledge off to make sure that they can still function at the level necessary to provide the services that they're required to do.
And circling back to the discussions, now I believe Commissioner Young, probably a month or so ago, brought in a sampling of reports. And again, those are technical documents specific to a facility. And I can appreciate that a technical document could be easily misunderstood because of, again, the technical nature of it being specific to a facility. But I want to emphasize, just because language is used in one document that's not seen in another document is not an indicator that something is being condoned in one location or being certified in one location and not in another. Is that a reasonable statement, if I can?
You are correct, yes.
And I apologize for beating that horse, but I don't want to have this misremembered in a week or two, so this is very important. Commissioner Plechnik, did you want to add to the discussion while we have Mr. Adams?
Yes, if I may, to follow on President Hamercheck's thought that we should be on the same page, or at least in the same book, I want to ask a few more basic questions. What are the standards that we're speaking about? I know the answer, but could you name the standards? What are they called in the Ohio Revised Code?
Sure. It's the minimum standards for jails in Ohio. They are also known by the formal name of standards for jails in Ohio. We use, and there's an older term also, Ohio jail standards. All those terms are used interchangeably, and they're actually found, while the authority comes out of the Ohio Revised Code 5120.10 of the Revised Code, the actual standards are located in 5120:1 of the Administrative Code, the Ohio Administrative Code. Each classification of jail has their respective standards listed there. The Lake County Jail is a full-service jail, and they will fall under the full-service jail standards that are listed there.
Thank you. So to be clear, when we're talking about the standards, we're talking about the minimum standards set by law. I want to emphasize the word minimum. And these are set by the Ohio Revised Code for jail operations, which in a limited sense encompass the building, but as we've already discussed, are really looking at the operations, which is more staff intensive in terms of our procedure and our people than the building itself. Is that correct?
Yes, there are things associated with the building, like we regulate cell size, and cells have to be a certain size, dormitory space has to be a certain size. There has to be so much date space available. So there are things associated with the structure itself that we regulate, but it's not the underlying internal construction or the integrity of what is still there. We do regulate construction when a place is being built. We oversee the construction process, but we don't engineer, and we rely on people to be working within their licensure to engineer and to design architecturally the buildings.
So you don't make recommendations as to when a new jail should be built or when a current jail or facility is adequate?
No, that's strictly in your purview, the commissioners, the sheriff, ultimately the citizens of your locality. That's up to you. We report on the condition of the jail, the operational condition of the jail, as we see it on the day of the inspection. It's strictly up to you to determine whether your structure is continuing to suit you in the manner.
And there have been quite a few debates about the incarceration model in the United States and Ohio. Where is the requirement that we have a jail, that a county is responsible to provide some form of incarceration for the courts? Where do we find that?
You can find that in the 341 section of Ohio Revised Code. I believe, I will tell you, you're starting to get out of my area of expertise. That's more in the sheriff's area, but if you go into section 341 of the Ohio Revised Code, that's where you'll find the information regarding that the sheriff having charge of the jail. Now, I don't know if that specific requirement is in that section, but there is a section of ORC, but you're out of my area of expertise there, but I think you can find what you're looking for in chapter 341.
And I know I'm going so basic, we can almost hear people humming, "I am a bill." But who sets the Ohio Revised Code? Who passes and adopts it?
Well, really, it's the General Assembly, and then the governor signs everything into law. It's the legislative process.
So the point that I'm making, that I'm trying to draw out, is if our county decided that we didn't want to incarcerate people, or we felt that the system for misdemeanors and felonies were inappropriate or unfair, would we be in a position as county commissioners to refuse to provide a jail facility?
Sir, I could give you an answer to that, but you're way out of my area of expertise there. I think that you would be better it would be better to consult your county prosecutor on those questions, or your legal representative.
Mr. Hackman, can we ignore the Ohio Revised Code?
No, you may not.
Dang it.
Title III does require that the Board of Commissioners provide a jail.
So, not to be too cute here, but we've had a lot of debate about whether or not the incarceration model is broken in the United States, and I think that that's an important debate to be had. But I do want everyone to recognize that to the extent that this is an issue you care about, I have the same authority that you do. I'm a concerned citizen. I have my thoughts on where things can be improved. But if we want to debate whether or not jails and incarceration are good or bad ideas, whether there are ways to improve the model in the United States, we really need to be looking to our state reps, state senators, and governor who passed the Ohio Revised Code. Heck, I'll get in the bus with you. I'd like to have that debate, but I want to have it with people who actually have the authority to make it. As we've confirmed from our council, as we've confirmed from our jail administrator, the authority that we have as commissioners is very limited. We're given the responsibility to provide safe incarceration space by the Ohio Revised Code, and where we have the wiggle room and flexibility is what's the most affordable, humane, right way to do that. And so I just want to make sure that when we're having debates here, we spend most of our time here where we can actually make a difference. Because if someone is hoping that we don't have a jail, or there's no more incarceration, or that we have less penalties for certain crimes, all of which are legitimate points of debate, understand that you're talking to another concerned citizen, not someone who has the authority to change the Ohio Revised Code. So focusing on the issue of how do we provide a safe, reasonably affordable jail, because the Ohio Revised Code says the county has to do it. We've heard from our jail administrator that this is not something that he makes recommendations on. So who should we look to? You said it's in our purview. Is there any thoughts or recommendations on who we can look to for an educated recommendation on what's needed and necessary?
Is that a question to me? I'm sorry.
Yes. Sorry to put it on you, but I will.
It's hard to see who you're looking at. I think there are experts out there that you can find. I believe that the county has contracted with them previously, but you may have the expertise on staff within your county's maintenance department. I don't know the structure and layout of the county, but I think you're looking more for a structural assessment. You might be looking for an overall criminal justice assessment, and there are entities out there that with whom you can contract that can provide those services if you don't have them in-house.
So to just give everyone a sense of where we're at to this point, the recommendation that we received initially from our sheriff's department is that we need to build a new jail. And the logic is that the current jail facility is nearing the end of its useful life, and that we have to either invest a substantial amount of money in the new facility, or I should say in the old facility. We have to either invest a substantial amount of money in the old facility or build a new facility, or possibly build multiple new facilities, although you cost that out, 2 or 3 jails cost considerably more than one due to economies of scale. So we've really been debating, do we invest in the old jail or in the new jail? And some have suggested a third, yet another option, which is just leave the jail as is and hope for the best. I want to ask a factual question I think you know the answer to. How many of the last 10 years has the Cuyahoga County Jail passed its inspections?
In the last 10 years?
Yeah.
I can't get back that far. They have not. I think 16 or 17 was the last year that they were found to be compliant. It was either 16 or 17. 2016, 2017. It's just a guess. I don't have the reports in front of me right now, but it was somewhere around that time.
So the reason I raised Cuyahoga County is that in the last decade, most years, they actually have passed their inspections, is my understanding, but they just continued to allow the facility to degrade in the hopes that maybe another elected official would deal with it. And unfortunately, and this is not something I say with any hope to criticize folks across the border, but unfortunately, people died. Lawsuits were filed, and then the elected officials and politicians said, okay, this is costing so much money, we have to do something about it. And I would say that my sincere concern is that while we can kick the can a little bit and we can ignore the problem, we can ignore the recommendation of our sheriff's department to build a new jail. We can ignore the unanimous recommendation of the local corrections board to build a new jail. We can do that, but where do we end up if people start to die like in Cuyahoga County? And I would say not if, but when, because that is the natural consequence of ignoring these problems. I know that you're not in a position to advise us about the legal risk. We have to look to our county prosecutor for that. I know you're not in a position to advise us about the current structure of the building. We have buildings and grounds and telecommunications who maintain the building to give us recommendations there. But just as a matter of common sense, have you ever seen a jail improve? If we just leave it as is, do buildings ever improve with time?
No, sir.
No. I don't, once again, with respect to Cuyahoga County, I work there, and I want Cuyahoga County to be successful. They're our neighbors. But their strategy was to sit there and do nothing and say, it's okay, it's fine, it's okay, it's fine. And then when everything went to heck in a handbasket, finally they were forced to take action. I'm not saying that our current model of incarceration is right. I'm not saying that the penalties we ascribe to every crime on the book is right, but I'm not a state representative. I once ran for the job, wasn't chosen, never was in a position to pass those laws or amend them. We have a far humbler task here, which is simply to comply with the law as it stands, which requires each county to provide for incarceration for those who are sentenced by our courts or in the process of being sentenced. And I, for one, want to make sure that every time you come through, we do get, I'll use the word, we do get a perfect inspection. Because these are the minimum standards. It is not a high aspiration to get a perfect score on minimum standards. It's quite literally the bare minimum that our residents in Lake County can expect. I've had neighbors go to the Lake County Jail. I've had friends go to the Lake County Jail. People make mistakes. Sometimes they run afoul of the system. Those friends, family, and neighbors deserve to be treated well. And the deputies in the jail deserve to be safe, as do the other inmates, from those who might not be good neighbors in that difficult, high-stress environment. I've had many residents complain about how deputies are not paid enough. I tend to agree. But it's not just about the dollar amount you receive at your job. Whether or not you're happy and excited to come to work has as much to do with whether or not you feel safe as whether or not you're well paid. And in many respects, safety is more, I'd say in all respects, safety is more important, because a $5 an hour raise is no good if you're dead. So I think that we all need, as we step back from the politics of this, and I know a lot of people want to make this an exciting political debate. Should we have incarceration in the U.S. or not? That is an important public policy issue. But you're talking to the wrong person if you want to change the law. Commissioners do not have that authority. All we can do is treat our folks here humanely, follow the law, and hopefully do so at an affordable cost. And I can tell you, based on our last study, we did have several studies. I believe Commissioners Hamercheck and Young voted for the 19 study. We have rough estimates on what it would cost to rehab the old jail, because we can't leave it as is. We can't be like Cuyahoga County unless we want lawsuits that'll bankrupt the county, or to build a new one. And the costs are, ironically enough, roughly the same. But rehabbing an old jail doesn't give additional resources for mental health, treatment, rehabilitation. It doesn't improve safety, and the useful life of a rehab structure is a lot less, a lot shorter period of time than building a new jail. And I don't think it's fair to the commissioners 10 years from now, and to all of you, to kick the can down the road 10 more years and say, oh, now we need to build another new jail again. I firmly believe that when this project is over, however it's done, you have a right to expect that no one in this room will be alive when the next commissioner comes to you and says, we need to build a new jail. Myself included, we should all be dead before that request comes to us. And I feel it was a real failing with the 1990s jail that we did not invest the money and the time and the skill and the expertise to make sure that that jail would last 50 to 60 years. I'm outraged that I am stuck with this debate. It should be 30 years. I shouldn't even be here for that debate. None of us should be at this dais, but the job wasn't done well, and now we have to revisit the issue. And I would rather make the tough decision here and now to save money over the longer term than to blow $70 million on a rehab and then come back in 10 years and say we need to do it again. If we want to fundamentally change the incarceration model in the United States, and I agree that we need more rehab and mental health options. I am sad when I see a judge say, well, you're not complying with drug court, you need to go to Lake County Jail. That's terrible. There should be a mental health facility that judges can send really their patients to. But in the world we live in, where I can't change the model, wouldn't it be better to have a jail that has treatment facilities in it so that person can be taken care of? We're in a position to do that with our local corrections board and local authority. And I, for one, want to take that stand and make that happen. And I hope that even though not everyone will agree on the exact right way to get it done, I hope that we're going to put the deputies and our neighbors who are forced to stay in that jail in front of ourselves in making this decision. And I hope that we're going to think about the long-term cost rather than, hey, can I kick the can down the road? Because everyone in Cuyahoga County wishes that their county government had been far-sighted right now. But it was a lot easier than having this debate here today. It was a lot easier to say, well, let the next gal deal with it. And now they're really dealing with it. And they don't have as much resources as they might have to do it the right way. Lake County's always gone above and beyond. Our president always says our staff And I want to add to that, I think our residents have always cared about each other like a family. It's why you see the extraordinary commitment in Deepwood, Adams Board, and all of our other county facilities to take care of the least among us. It's why you see the churches, the Fire Chiefs Association come together with Lake Tran and everyone else to distribute food to the poor during COVID. If we really care, these are the conversations we need to be having. Debating laws that we don't have the authority to change doesn't do a lot of good. Let's rent a bus and go to Columbus to have that debate. But here we have to talk about, within the system we're given, the authority we actually have. I'm not a congressman and I won't pretend to be. How can we do the right thing? Thank you.
I'd like to say a few words.
Please, Commissioner. Go ahead.
Appreciate John's comments. I'll be brief. Number one, I think that we all agree that we need a jail. We got to have a jail. I mean, we're not going to pitch a tent out there and, give our prisoners some charcoal and some frozen foods or something and ask them, prepare your own meals and here's a shovel for you to, leave your refuse. Good luck, guys. We're not going to do that. So we need a jail, that's definite. I think we all agree that we need to do something with the jail, whether it's build a new jail or just improve the old one. Now, that being said, we don't have quotes yet on what it would cost to do some rehab there. We do have a presentation by one of our clients in Lake County about what they feel it might cost to do the work, but even that isn't very specific. So we haven't asked for quotes or anything of that nature in reference to what it would cost for a rehab. Currently, we have a jail, obviously. It's not perfect, but it is meeting state standards. So as far as the safety of the prisoners is concerned, as far as safety of the public is concerned, it's meeting all of those standards. Now, I agree, these gentlemen are putting in yeoman's work on this thing, and I really appreciate it. And I believe in what you're doing and the way you're doing it. So I thank you for that. My concern about the jail is cost at this point. Not that we don't need to do something now. I'm not suggesting we just kick it down the road and hope someday somebody will solve the problem. But we start talking about spending more money as long as we're not talking about a tax increase. That makes me a lot more comfortable. Because when you start taking money out of people's pockets to make sure that our prisoners are better treated, then, and that's what it really boils down to, is because we have the safety standards now that we're meeting in reference to safety, public and prisoners. And the building is there just to make sure those issues are dealt with. That's the purpose of the building, the safety of the public, the safety of the prisoners. If we're talking about rehab, we can do rehab at a different facility near there. There'd be some transportation involved, but most of our prisoners are not terribly violent. And I don't think that most of them would, when you get into a van, they'd suddenly go berserk and start attacking someone necessarily. Not that we wouldn't have security with them, but I don't think they're a huge danger to the public. So a tax increase right now that hurts a lot of our low-income people, especially a property tax increase that threatens home ownership. We could have in some situations people giving up their own beds in their homes because we want a better bed for our prisoners. So we're not going to go there, I don't believe. That's the last thing I'd support, is a tax increase. And I think you feel basically the same way.
If I might just agree, I don't believe that we should pay for the jail with a tax increase. I believe that we should do our job as commissioners and squeeze the budget hard. And I don't think that'll be easy as we go over it line by line and get the work done, but we have a statutory duty to do just that. So I want to agree with Commissioner Young. I believe that we can indeed do this job. I just don't think it'll be easy. I think this is why we're hired by the people to do this work. It's, I was chair of finance in Willoughby Hills for many years. There were tough decisions to make, and we had late nights going over the budget. And I think that that's what we're going to have to do, not just this year, but every year, because this is going to be a long-term burden. I mean, the reality is paying for this jail, constructing it, is not going to be done in 1 year. And so the work will go on, but we don't get to decide whether or not to provide the jail. And what's more, I think we need to look at the annualized cost. I agree with you that the numbers aren't final or settled, but when we look at the best estimates we have that are derived from 2019, if anything, the numbers are higher today than they were back then. And so if we're guesstimating based on 2019 numbers, $70 million for rehab, I think it's safe to say it's at least that much. And so when the cost of rehabbing the old jail and building a new one that gives us the opportunity to do it the right way with a longer useful life, with more access to mental health facilities and rehab, to me it's a no-brainer. I mean, if you look at the cost of potentially $70 million to rehab the jail versus $100 million, let's say, to build a new one, but you get 10 years out of a $70 million expenditure, or $7 million a year, versus getting 50 years out of $100 million or $2 million a year, you're talking less than a third the cost. And that's the real issue.
I want to support that as well. I agree with that statement. If it's $100 million to build a new one and $70 million to rehab, definitely a new jail.
And I think that we're going to be pretty close to that in the end. If anything, I think we're going to see that rehab is going to become an increasingly expensive proposition, because as the sheriff has shared with us, and I'll copy our president saying, please contradict me if I'm wrong, if we just build an addition to the new jail as part of the rehab, which we almost certainly will have to do, that's not just $20 million in expense to build that addition. You're going to have to hire 8 to 10 deputies to staff it. Whereas if we build a new jail with a modern floor plan, we can actually automate a lot of the prisoner or inmate movement. So that, number one, it's nice to not have handcuffs and be pulled back and forth. If I were an inmate, I'd prefer to walk down a hallway. But the deputies would prefer that too, because that's less risk to them as they have to move people.
Right.
It also means we don't have to hire as many deputies to get the job done. And we talked about the era of COVID-19 ad nauseum at these meetings. Well, this is not the last time we're going to have a transmissible disease or pandemic. And having a jail where you can have non-contact movement of inmates isn't just safer for the deputies and inmates because you're limiting contact with potentially violent prisoners, you're limiting contact of transmissible diseases too. And that's important for the safety of everyone in that building as well as the people who visit. So there's a lot of positive externalities from building a new jail under modern standards as opposed to just rehabbing the old one. Now we have work to do. We need to cost these numbers out. We need to have precise numbers. We need to formalize what we're proposing. But I do want to add, because several people have said, well, I want you to put the issue of whether or not we're building a jail on the ballot. I can put whether or not we have a birthday party for my dog on the ballot. But much as I want to have a birthday party for my dog, that issue won't have any legally binding weight. We just spend money to put something on the ballot, and ultimately there's no legal weight to the outcome. If we put the issue of a jail on the ballot and everyone votes no, let's say, no, don't build a jail, guess what happens when someone sues and says the jail is not ADA compatible? Or there's water leaking on my head and the court says build a new jail. Do they say, well, we were going to order you to build a new jail, but because you voted no and accept, no, there is no exception. I think it's dishonest to the people of Lake County to say that we can put an issue on the ballot, and if we vote no, then there won't be a new jail built. As soon as there's a serious issue like in Cuyahoga County, it will go to court. There will be a lawsuit. I'm a law professor. I've trained lots of good lawyers. Trust me. One of my students will sue us, and they will win. And the court will say, in addition to paying this person a lot of money, your taxpayer dollars, the court will say, you either rehab the jail or build a new one now. No waiting. no decisions. You say, well, but the people voted no. They'll say, I don't care. The Ohio Revised Code says you must provide a jail. You don't have a choice. So I'm all for putting tax increases on the ballot. I don't believe commissioners should be voting to raise taxes unilaterally. I don't. And that's why you see in Ashtabula, where they are building a new jail, putting the tax increase issue on the ballot. They're respecting the people's right to vote on that. But it is nonsensical to me to put an issue on the ballot where even if I vote no as a resident and it passes 100% of the vote, it has no legal weight. We shouldn't deceive our neighbors in saying they have power they don't. If we really want to fundamentally change the way jails work in Ohio, we should be telling our neighbors to contact our state reps and state senators with a proposal to change the Ohio Revised Code. They have that authority. But if we put something on the ballot, it's a recommendation. It's not the law. And the first time we go to court over this jail and we're found to be not in compliance with the ADA, not in compliance with minimum jail standards, the court's just going to say, fix it, either by rehabbing the jail or building a new one. And I just want to be honest. I want people to know what the options really are. I don't want someone to believe that we have the magic power to put this on the ballot and that if people vote no, there won't be any $100 million expense for a new jail. In reality, when we're found to be out of compliance, and it will happen, I guarantee you, within the next couple years, we'll have a court order and we'll have to follow it whether the people vote yes, no, or maybe. So I'm all for putting things on the ballot when there's real say and where it means something. But I feel like someone has been overly political and has been fooling folks that we can ignore the Ohio Revised Code. Even the jail administrator, as non-political as he is, says, no, you can't do that. We can't ignore the Ohio Revised Code. We can change it by contacting our legislators, and we should know what authority we have. We should know the avenues to actually make change. Because if you're misdirecting your attempt, then the people who actually have the responsible decision-making authority will never hear your voice. So I want to be honest about this debate. I want to talk about what I can do as a commissioner, and I want to hear what you care about and your priorities for the jail that we're going to rehab or build. I want to know what you want in that facility as a Lake County resident. But if we want to fundamentally change the model, we need a bus, we need to go to Columbus, and we need to talk to our state reps and senators. And I'm happy to join you. It's a debate I want to be a part of. But I want to humbly admit that I may as well be sitting there right now for that discussion, because I have no vote on it other than as a resident. Thank you.
I had one more point that I just wanted to cover.
Please, sir, go ahead.
Thank you. And that's simply that I'd like to keep the focus as much as possible on economic growth for our Board of Commissioners.
Compliance with law
I think
probably would be well advised as well. But
I think that's very important, because as important as the jail is, and I'm supportive that we need to go ahead with the project in one way or another, whether it's rehab or new building or whatever, and we're going to try to ignore the tax increase. But at the same time, economic growth has to remain our focus. Without that focus, and we've done so much together, with the grant programs, things of that nature, I think we've done yeoman's work as commissioners, just giving myself and you guys a pat on the back here.
I'll take it.
But the key is keeping that focus. And the jail, as important as it is, and the fact we have to have it by law, as Commissioner Hamercheck just mentioned, we have to keep that under consideration as well. But long term, Lake County's focus needs to remain jobs, and more jobs, and more jobs. When people prosper, crime goes down. And that's not the only reason for people to prosper. Obviously, we want their families to be strong. We want to have great school systems. We want to offer people opportunities and hope for their future. So we need to keep our focus on economic growth. But the jail has to be dealt with. So I leave it at that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Adams, well, be respectful of your time. I do have a couple points I want to make sure that we're abundantly clear on. Passing an inspection through your agency in no way should be construed as an endorsement of the physical facility. Is that a reasonable statement, sir?
Yes, it's not an endorsement of the quality of the underlying structure.
Thank you, sir. And when you're talking about being a partner in the construction process, I think this is worth restating. You make sure that the people working on the project are operating within their licensure. That's critical, that you got licensed architects that are competent and qualified, licensed engineers that are competent and qualified. That's part of the process that you help. You're that safety check and balance, if you will, that's outside of an individual county. Is that a reasonable way to look at that?
Yeah, I will tell you, the general structure, the regulations for the general structure are going to come from the Ohio Building Code. We have construction and renovation criteria that are on top of what's already there. We don't regulate the Ohio Building Code. There will be regulators who do that. We do look at the plans, and we see that they are stamped by the licensed architect, and that the structural engineer has signed off on it also. However, what we are looking at when you are building a jail is we are looking at that construction and renovation criteria that we require to be included in the jail. And that's upgrades on security walls. A commercial building structure is built to one level of structural integrity. We require an extra level to be placed in the walls when it comes to secure areas for your secure perimeter, and those are all explained to the jail or the commissioners at the beginning of the process. We'll provide you a copy if you don't already have it of our construction and renovation criteria, and they spell it out. It's not a very complicated process. Our regulations and requirements build on those that are already there from the Ohio Building Code.
Excellent. Thank you for those clarifications, sir. I just wouldn't want anything to be misunderstood or worse yet, misrepresented. So, okay, with that, does anybody on the team have anything for Mr. Adams? Indicating none. Mr. Adams, thank you so much for your generosity with your time, and I'm sure we will be very much staying in touch with you. And again, thank you so much, and hopefully we're going to score very well on that $50 million there. So. Yes, I know there.
With you, Mr. President. I enjoyed speaking with all of you. If you need anything, you know how to get a hold of me. Please reach out anytime. We're always available.
Thank you so very much, sir.
See you.
Bye, sir. Did you just want to close that or just leave it going there? Okay. And if I could, Commissioner Young, to your point about estimates regarding new versus rehab, yes, whether you'll accept it or not, we absolutely do, in fact, have an architect's estimate for rehab, renovation, expansion, replacement. We have those estimates. That's why we're able to speak with the numbers with confidence that we have been. I regret that you're either unwilling or unable to accept that, but I cannot let that stand.
I can explain why I'm not fully acceptance of it.
Please.
And that's simply that the folks we asked to do the analysis, if I'm not sure what you're quoting from there, but
my handwritten notes.
So they're simply what, your estimates?
For the record, my handwritten notes of our conversation. You asked what I was quoting from. I'm quoting from my handwritten notes.
What's the source of your notes?
My brain.
Your brain.
My hand.
So
this pen.
So you made it. So that's your quote, then, right? Or is that an expert quote?
What are you talking about?
You just said you have from an architectural engineer. You have these quotes.
No, sir. You asked what I was
Tell
quoting
me
from.
who is the architectural
my
engineer, then?
The K2M, which we had.
K2M. Okay, there we go. All right, that's what I was saying. Was simply that.
No, that's not what you were
there's
saying,
someone
but
that
maybe
we
what you were
use.
alluding to.
There's someone that we use in Lake County for building projects. My only concern is that we've put them into a very compromised position by having someone who will probably bid on the project itself to build or rehab a jail, offering the quote as to what that would cost and whether we should do it or not. I don't think that's a thoroughly reasonable way to do it. Now, I know I voted for it just after joining the commission in 1999, and I didn't realize that K2M was one of our clients at that point in time that we work with.
1999?
2019, I'm sorry. So at any rate, I didn't realize that K2M was one of our clients then, one of our customers at that point. So
Considering this was their second bite at the apple, how did you not know that, if I may ask?
I wasn't a member of the commission
That was all
when they
full-
were originally, I wasn't a member of the commission until I came here in 2019.
The original documents were provided to you as they were provided to myself and Commissioner Serino at the time. But anyway, moving on.
So
Okay.
those documents pointed out that they were, okay, at any rate. So yeah, I do have questions about them, whether I missed something or I didn't miss something. I don't think I'm missing it now. And I think that that's not a reasonable way to do business, to ask someone whether we should do a job or not, knowing that they have some expectation that they may be the ones doing the job. I don't think that's a formal, efficient, professional way to get estimates. But at any rate,
And you
let's
do
move
understand
on.
the scope of an engineering review would include an engineer's or architect's estimate. So I don't want to have this misrepresented. The review of the facilities included an estimate. I want to be abundantly clear on that. I know there's folks in our audience who've actually reviewed these documents individually, and they get it. I'm just a little uncomfortable that as a board, there seems to be some misunderstanding as to the scope of what these documents actually are.
I don't think you understand what you're looking at there. I think the reality is that the client themselves, the company, would have to approve of whatever you see there, not your notes, obviously, but whatever you're quoting from in your notes. Those would have to have been approved of by the company itself. You didn't. It isn't as if the architectural engineer could just, if a company decided they didn't like what the architectural engineer was quoting or recommending, they couldn't just simply force it to be in the report. They could probably insist their name not be used, but it's the firm itself that we paid to do that study, and they paid the architectural engineer, I believe. What do you, let's not do this now. You and I can talk about this at some point.
We can't
But-
legally talk about this outside of a public meeting because this is discussions, deliberations, and decisions. It would not be compliant with controlling law.
Okay.
This is the time and
I
place.
think we could have an informational meeting together about these types of technical issues in more detail, where we wouldn't be making decisions. We would simply be receiving information.
From who? Each other?
No, we could have K2M come in and talk to us, if that's what you want to do.
Well, let me just finish my thought here. So I have the document in front of me, K2M, Lake County, Ohio, Lake County Jail Analysis, Final Report, August 25, 2019. As part of this document, a scope of work was determined, a scope of work of which you approved. This was a follow-up to a preceding document a few years earlier, of which had been made available to you. So I don't.
When was it made available to me? What are you saying? It was when I was in the legislature?
Jason, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but when Commissioner Young was onboarded, all these documents were made available. I know I personally.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. You mean
Okay, you
after
got. Okay, got it. Okay, no, I just want to make sure that we're talking about Commissioner Young, not State Representative Young. So, all right, I'm going to check that one off. Something else that you had stated about the folks that are incarcerated in that facility not being violent. I think there's, and I'm not going to get into too much detail here, but there's a.
I said for the most part.
For the most part, fair enough. And I'm trying to think of a tactful way to say this, and it's. I'm reaching deep to make this work, so I'm just going to go with my notes here. nonviolent. Well, they're all not violent until they are. We've got a corrections officer that was recently attacked, required surgical intervention to reconstruct his broken body, and is rehabbing. To have you pulling things out of the air on matters that are as serious as this, I am taking exception to. Consequences of failure is high.
John.
That includes loss of life. We need to take this serious. I realize this is low-hanging fruit politically, but we need to take this seriously. We have a legal obligation to address this. We have a fiduciary responsibility to do this in the most effective manner possible. You have talked about experts. We have two of them sitting to our right. We have another sitting in the back of the room. Captain Brooks, I do not believe, is in attendance. We have people who you dismissed earlier. You wanted the state to talk. The state has talked, and they have identified these people as subject matter experts in our employ. I'm very concerned that this is becoming a political hot potato. So I just want to keep things on track that this is very serious work. We have concerns for our safety of our staff, but we also have to be concerned for the safety of other inmates because, I don't want to get into too much here, but it is conceivable that inmates could get into it, and I don't know where
Well,
this...
John, I think that you're taking my comment out of context. The reality was what I said, just a minute, please. What I said was that when it comes to transporting prisoners, that the majority of our population of prisoners, as far as I know, are nonviolent. And I'm sure the sheriff is well aware of who has a history of violence. I'm sure accommodations could be made to transport them on occasion for job training, drug interdiction, a number of different things that they may need transportation for if we get a higher and higher population of prisoners and we just don't have room anymore for any type of training at the facility. I wasn't suggesting we take extremely violent prisoners and put them in a van without proper protection from a deputy. I'm sorry if you misunderstood me, but that was what I was trying to convey. So I certainly, again, I'm just as concerned for the safety of the prisoners there and of the staff there as you are, I believe. And I'm not sure what you mean by a political hot potato. We're talking about spending $100 million, John, Commissioner. That's extremely important. So let's not do a little tit for tat on, each word that the other says and somehow trying to pick each other apart based on those types of things. You know that I'm not, that I am concerned about the safety of the folks over there. You know me after all these years. That's not what I do. This issue is important to me too, and I am ready to help any way that I can, short of a tax increase.
That being said, Paul, Mark, question. You're I think nobody's refuted that you're a subject matter expert, so I'm going to ride this horse a little ways. So can you give us some idea of what's involved? Let's use that recent sewer backup, having to recover that blanket and other things. Do you do that with the inmates shoulder to shoulder with you, or do you have to have the...
No, they had to clear the range.
Clear the range.
Right. So what happens then is you have an operational problem for the jail.
Okay.
So the jail has to move those prisoners somewhere to get them out of there so we can work in that area and get the problem resolved.
And how much time? 10 minutes, 15 minutes? Oh, I
We
think
were
I heard
there-
you say 4 hours, if I remember
4 hours
correctly.
Sunday night and then 8 hours on Monday. And then 3 more hours on Tuesday.
Could that have happened in a new facility as
No.
well as in an old facility?
No, a new
A blanket
facility.
couldn't be stuffed down the drain?
A new facility would have devices, which are grinders, which are on the fixtures. So if they ever try to flush things down there, the grinders actually pulverize them to the point that they'll pass all the way out.
And for us to put a grinder on that drain would be extremely more expensive than building the, well,
It wouldn't
there'd be
be
101 different things like
Yeah,
that would cost a huge amount of money and
with the
as far
with
as compared to rehab and new building, right?
Right.
Yeah.
the way that the jail is built and these small pipe chases that it has in there, there'd be no way that we could retrofit that into the jail.
I see.
And continuing that thought, so that was what sounds like a significant disruption, taking that range out of service just for maintenance purposes. Now let's talk about rehabbing that range and taking it out of service for days, weeks.
Yeah, wouldn't be.
How would that impact things? Let's just
Well,
let's enter that. Now that, again, you're a recognized expert on the subject, let's enter that. And yes, I'm being as sarcastic as I possibly can.
I would say logistically, it would be impossible to rehab ranges.
Logistically impossible.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Okay.
Mr. President,
Yes.
something's only a political hot potato until you turn into French fries or potato chips, in which case it's not so bad.
I gotta give him that.
But I say this in levity because I want to ask a more serious question and put Director Eifelis, Director Stefanko on the spot. You've been called subject matter experts by the state, by the president of our commission. You work on a day-to-day basis in the maintenance of the jail. You've heard the recommendation of our county sheriff to build a new jail. You've seen the recommendation of the local corrections board, which includes our prosecutor, our public defender, our judges, to unanimously vote to recommend to build a new jail. I would be really curious. I would be grateful for your, if not recommendation, thoughts, but I would really like your recommendation if you have one at this point.
I think this has been a long time coming. We've worked on this for years to try to get a new jail. That's why this facility was built. That's why our facility was built. It was all done to make room for a new jail because we knew previously that we were going to have to replace it. So we started working on it years ago to get everything laid out so we have everything in a row to be able to build that new jail. And I think looking at the maintenance kind of actually masks what the actual problems are of the jail. We do maintain it and we do keep it up to standards, but that masks what the actual problems are. Our fire lines rot away. So we spend $12,000 to $15,000 a year on replacing fire lines. We have buildings older than that jail that we've never touched. You shouldn't have to touch those fire lines. But because of the construction and the way the jail was done, we have to replace those lines. We're going to spend $49,000 this year on masonry. We spent $36,000 last year, $35,000 the year before. It's just constant money poured into this building that, we have to spend every year. I believe you signed a letter from me this morning, $26,000 to replace a compressor for the chiller, which all the mechanical in that facility needs to be replaced also.
Saul?
I don't want to echo on. I'm speaking. I could probably speak for Mark also on this point, but our two departments take a lot of pride in what we do. I do, Commissioner Hammercheck. You said I'm a tough boss one time.
Indeed.
And I like my guys to take pride in what they do, and I want them to do the best job they can, and they do. And in every other building in the county, I can see where we can make progress. We can go into a building that doesn't have something or has something that's aging, and we can put our effort into it and a good design, and we can fix things and bring it up to standard or better. But in the jail, we're not even holding our own. We continuously lose ground in there. And as I said before, that building requires more maintenance than all the other county buildings combined. Seriously. That all by itself should scream something to somebody that says that we're not holding our own there. We're losing ground all the time there. The other thing that, and I've watched these meetings on YouTube, and I know jail capacity comes up routinely. That you know, sometimes we have 350 or 360 or whatever, but the jail can hold maybe closer to 400. Commissioner Plechnik brought up a point earlier, and Mark mentioned that we moved prisoners. The one thing that I think gets missed many times is that if the jail had a capacity of 400, if you put 400 people in that jail, I think you're making a large mistake. Because if something happens, you don't have any place to move prisoners to. When sewage starts coming up in a shower drain, what do you do with 20 prisoners? Where are you going to put them? If it happens to 2 cells or 2 ranges, now you got twice as many. Where are you going to put those guys? There's no place to put them. And that's too many to call Geauga County or Cuyahoga and say, hey, can we bring you 50 guys? Because we got a problem. Our Emergency Operations Center, which we both maintain, Mark and I, we have 10 dispatch positions for 911 for the better part of this county, and we use about 5 of them. We use 5 of them, but we have 10 because when there's a disaster, we need 10. We're the only ones that can do that. We will assist Mentor or anybody else with an additional capacity to dispatch for police and fire with this additional capacity. And I think the jail is the same way because there is no place else. When we have a problem in the jail and it is truly at wall-to-wall capacity, we've got a really big problem because we got no place to put them. Where are they going to go? So a jail with a total capacity of 400 or whatever it is, in my opinion, should be 350, even though you can put 400 people in it. So talking about that and saying that we never really do reach total capacity, I think we're at capacity when we're 50 people short of capacity because of that. But Commissioner Plechnik, to your question, in my opinion, based on everything that I've seen in 35 years or 36 years of being here, in my opinion, it would be the prudent thing to do to replace the jail. I don't like saying that. I don't like paying more taxes. My family lives in Lake County. I don't want them to pay more taxes. But at the end of the day, I think they're going to spend it one way or the other. Sooner or later, they're going to spend that money one way or the other. And Commissioner Plechnik, I think your point of rehabilitation is sound. I think it's a sound point that should be incorporated into the new jail to help reduce the population of the jail. And I think I listened to the judges. I went to a couple of their meetings, and they have been making a concerted effort to keep inmates out of the jail. They find ways to keep them out of the jail. The only people, or the majority of the people in the jail right now, are ones that truly belong in jail. And because of that, you have a higher density or higher population of people that may be violent. They're not the minor misdemeanors that are in jail. Our judges don't put those guys in jail anymore. They find ways to keep them out.
And Sheriff Liam Bruno has said many times, you go back 20 years and 2/3 of the inmates were misdemeanor convicts and 1/3 were felons. Now that ratio's flipped. 2/3 have felonies, 1/3 are misdemeanor, and more than half, by the way, suffer from some form of mental health issue. More than half suffer from some form of substance abuse issue. So I think that we would be remiss not to acknowledge that that's the population we have to serve. And it's a very, very difficult job, and it's really the deputies on the front lines doing it. But I know that your departments are on the front lines too, working in the jail. So Director Stefanko says he thinks it would be prudent to. He does recommend building a new jail. Do you agree, Director Eiffelis?
As I stated before, yes, I agree. That's what we've been planning on for years, to try to get the jail replaced.
So we've heard from our sheriff, who served as jail administrator for many years prior to taking the top job. We've heard from our local corrections board, which is our judges, our prosecutor, our defender, and more. We've heard from Buildings and Grounds. We've heard from Telecommunications, who maintain the jail together. And the state has said they don't make further recommendations on this issue. The study that the commissioners actually requested in 2019 demonstrates the great cost of rehabbing the current building. I don't know how many taxpayers would want to spend $70 million for 10 years and then have to have this debate again. I enjoy public debate. I could stay here all day, but I think most taxpayers would be pretty
we're not
frustrated.
staying here all day.
Oh, yes, we are.
You can only adjourn if Ron and I agree, and I think we're going to be here all day.
That's right.
But in all seriousness, I don't think that the average taxpayer would be very happy with us if we spent $70 million and then 10 years later said, oh, we need another $150 million to do it again. I just don't see that. And I know, once again, there's been an interesting political movement, and I'd really love to know who started it, to suggest that we can somehow change the world by putting this issue on the ballot. We can put anything we want on the ballot, but we cannot change the Ohio Revised Code that way. And for folks who want to simply avoid the issue of the jail, you need to talk to your state rep or your state senator. The commissioners only work within the Ohio Revised Code, and my question is, how do we do the right thing in the most affordable way? How do we take care of our deputies and inmates who have to live in that jail 24/7, 365 in the most affordable way for the taxpayer? Because I absolutely agree with Commissioner Young. We have too many people who've been put out of their homes due to excessive property taxes. And I think we're tired of hearing it's for the blank, whether it's for the children, it's to save the whales. We've heard it over and over again. It has to be done. We need to do X, Y, Z. And yet nobody thinks about the seniors, those on fixed income, those who've lost their job, that can't afford to pay those rates. So I'm in complete agreement with Commissioner Young that it's our obligation to work very, very hard to do this without asking for more from our residents. But what I don't want to do is kick this can down the road, ignore the obligation we have under state law, and then get a court order that says, congratulations, you're building a new jail. It's going to cost you $150 million because guess what? Inflation. And, you also have a $50 million judgment against you. Now we've doubled the cost. And we're not just raising taxes, we're mortgaging the future. And I don't think that's right. So once again, I want to take the politics out of this. I want to be blunt about what we can and can't do as a community. And I'm open to suggestions. If someone can find a better solution than the sheriff's recommendation, the corrections board's recommendation, buildings and grounds recommendation, telecommunications recommendation, then the numbers and assessments we have from studies that the county paid tens of thousands of dollars for, I'm open to hearing it. If someone can show me a more humane, more affordable path forward that complies with state law so that the county isn't sued and we don't put the bill to the taxpayer, I'm all for it. I'm Slovenian. I'm cheap. Show me a cheaper way where I can do the job and I will take that path 7 ways to Sunday. But if all you have to say is put it on the ballot or kick the can down the road or I don't like the way the law is or there has to be a better way, well, tell me what the better way is. Tell me what the better way is and I will hear you out because I want the best way. But I've listened to expert after expert after expert. I've studied the numbers and I've looked at them as thoroughly and thoughtfully as I can because I'm a taxpayer too and I don't like paying what taxes I have to pay now. So I just want to make sure we're debating what we can actually do. And I think that our focus at this point, sincerely, should be on how do we pay for this without raising taxes? And how do we build a jail that will last 60 years rather than 30, 31 so that we don't have to have this debate again? Only law professors enjoy debates like this. I'm enjoying it. But everyone else is like, oh gosh, we don't want this to happen for another 30, 40 years. So let's do it right this time. So people say, wow, whoever built that jail, I can't remember. They're probably dead. But whoever built it did a good job. Whoever built it invested our money well. We keep taking away from our grandchildren. You look at all this crazy federal spending, and let's be real. They are spending our great-great-grandchildren's money right now. I want to give an asset back to the grandchildren, great-grandchildren. I want to build something that will be there to serve them so that even though the world may not be perfect, in Lake County it's a little better because we did it as a community. We actually cared. We spent the money well. We took care of our own. and we save the taxpayer dollar. That's what I want to do. But I want to take the politics right out of it, because we can debate all day long. None of us in this room have the power to change the Ohio Revised Code. Commissioner Young held that distinct honor for, I believe, 16 years, but no one else has ever held that pen. And if we want to talk about changing state law in the incarceration mile in the United States, I'm all for it. But we got to go to Columbus for that discussion.
I just want to say real quick, I am going to look for another perspective real quick. See if we can't bring someone in who would give us a little bit different view of the cost for rehab as opposed to building the new building. Although I'd love to build a new building. I mean, it would solve a lot of problems and avoid a lot of headaches. And maybe long-term it would be less expensive. But I'm not convinced by the one recommendation we've gotten to this point. Now, we have two recommendations, but they're from the same source, as far as I'm concerned. Although they may be a different architect, I'm not sure. But the company that approved and we paid is the same company. If someone else is for a tax increase at some point or another, I don't want to paint them into a corner either. I never supported a bill that was an overall tax increase. But if someone does support a tax increase, every now and then, they probably did the right thing. It's hard for me to say that. But every now and then, they probably did the right thing. We do need taxes at some point or another. So I just wanted to say that, get it out of the way. Thank you.
Oh. Turning to Paul. So, and Mark, we recently were trying to do some HVAC improvements, some air handlers. We tried to time things with the weather so it wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold, and Mother Nature didn't exactly cooperate. That put us in a little bit of a trick bag on a couple of floors. We had to make some special accommodations. I think it turned into a terrarium because some of the inmates decided they want to turn the showers on, thinking that'll cool things down. Obviously, science is not their forte. So sequencing, staging, there's a number of logistical, I'm going to call them nightmares. I'm proud to say I am still a state licensed contractor. I understand logistics. A rehab, a refit. This isn't exactly like remodeling a house where you go put a fresh coat of paint on it and some nice new curtains and maybe call the carpet guy in and 6 months same as cash. This is very serious. The logistics associated with that, anybody saying that, well, yeah, you can just freshen it up, or the Monday morning quarterbacks, I'm going to say, let's take I'm from Missouri model. Show me where you've done it before. Any suggestions there? That just that one staging alone was a real wake-up call. Is that a reasonable statement?
It's a reasonable statement, yes.
That was a microcosm of, in my opinion, what would happen if you renovated as opposed to rebuild. There have been a couple buildings that the county has renovated thinking that they were going to save money, and ultimately it cost at times almost twice what they thought it was going to cost. The problem with renovating, as I have experienced in Lake County over the past 3.5 decades, is that you don't know what's behind the wall. And the bigger problem is, once you start, you have to finish. If you think it's going to cost $50 million to renovate something and you start, you're invested in that. If it costs $80 million, you're going to spend $80 million. If it costs $100 million, you're going to spend $100 million because you already made that decision to finish it. New build is a whole different story because you can start from the foundation up, something you know, something you can guarantee as close as you can to being solid. But when you renovate something, when you say it's going to cost X amount of dollars and you start peeling the walls away and you find things that you didn't anticipate,
Right.
It's too late. You're invested. You're going to spend that money one way or the other. In my opinion, smart money is on building new because you don't have money to waste on renovation that could be wasted on renovation. And any building, such as the Lake County Jail, that has leaked from the day it opened, has got surprises in it. I promise. They're there.
Agreed. Okay. Agreed. And again, just moving forward, locking systems. We can't even get parts for these. They're beyond end of service.
The locks in the Lake County Jail, the secure locks, the big locks, are made by Folger Adams, which is now Southern Folger, I think, or Folger, I forget their name, but they merged with Southern Steel, merged with Folger Adams. Those locks are no longer manufactured. We have about 500 of them, and they are about $1,600 a copy. They no longer make them, and we're at the point now, if they break, we replace them. And that's the simple fact. That's just the way it is.
And I don't know if either of you want to comment on this, but well, actually, Paul, you'll remember this. Back in the days when the jail was built, the female population, very small. And I think when the architects designed it, I seem to remember we had to go back and put some visual dividers in because some rocket scientists didn't think of line of sight. You want to?
We put, originally they put up great big steel barriers. The sheriff was a sergeant, then lieutenant, then captain, decided to put American flags up there. And I thought that was a good, actually terrific idea. But the female population has blossomed in Lake County, the Lake County Jail. There's quite a few more female inmates than there ever was.
Fair enough. And speaking of being, thank you, gentlemen. Turning back to Commissioner Young, if I may, I appreciate that you take a great deal of personal pride in no taxes. I get that. That's fair. I know that you had, and I have to be blunt, you've gone through the jail once. After the jail, you gave words to the effect of nothing wrong with that building, a roofer and a plumber can't fix. I don't know who you're planning on bringing in to review it. It'll be very interesting to see. But if it goes along the lines of some of your other suggestions about buying some hotels because they're going cheap and putting those into service, or building it one floor at a time.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Those are non-starters. Well, maybe you don't know what I'm talking about, because you also said you didn't expect this today. When 2 weeks ago we talked about having Mark and Paul here, but we couldn't do it last week because we had another event at Lake Tran and our time was constrained, and Mr. Adams was kind enough to
John, I never
us.
said those things about a hotel, etc. That's not
I'm
true.
sorry,
We don't need to build.
Bruno available.
I never said we don't need to build a hotel. We don't need to build a new jail.
You had
because we can
indicated that
simply put them
hotels are
into
not being occupied.
Let's not
Perhaps
start yelling at each other
I
here.
don't believe I'm yelling, sir.
Well,
I don't think
you're
I've raised
stating
my voice
things
at
that
all.
just aren't
I'm
true.
finding you not true. Well, there seems to be some things that are very interesting.
I might have said something like,
Might have.
now listen, I don't know exactly what I said, John, but the reality is I didn't say that. Now, I could have said something like, I can't even think of a context where I would have said we don't need to build a new jail, we can just put people into hotels. I might have said something like, if there's overflow, maybe sometimes we could put people into other accommodations. I don't think I
know
ever
if
said anything like
I
that.
feel
And what was
terrible
the other,
putting
what was
the
the other
sheriff
thing?
on the spot here, but Sheriff, in regards to the informational discussion several months ago, I believe I got up and walked out of the room to avoid any kind of discussions, deliberations, or decisions where Commissioner Young suggested purchasing hotels. I seem to remember you very calmly explaining to him that putting hotels into service would not be feasible, and I just walked away and got a cup of coffee.
Oh, purchasing hotels.
Yes.
Okay, I
In
see.
lieu of buying or building a new jail. I'm sure the sheriff
I
has
might-
enough
you know, I-
credibility that he would.
I need information
So don't take
on
my
this.
word over the, sheriff I think will back me up on that.
Well, I might have said something like that.
Might
That's
have said?
possible. I don't remember if I said it or not. But
These are.
the reality is
these
that's a typical question that someone who's a novice at this might ask. I don't see the harm in exploring every opportunity.
I'm sure the city of Mentor would take great
So-
offense to buying hotels in Mentor and putting prisoners there and turning our corrections officers into hall monitors. I'm pretty sure somebody would take offense to that.
Well, you'd have to redesign the building, obviously. You'd have to remodel the building, whatever the term might be, to make it work for prisoners.
I'm pretty sure the state
that would be reasonable, I would think. If you start calling it, just taking a hotel, and putting someone with very serious crimes into room number 301 and telling the maids to keep an eye on him. That's not what I was talking about, if I was talking about that at all, which I don't remember the specific. But go ahead, Sheriff. He asked you a question.
I'm assuming you're okay with what I said, Sheriff? Hate to put you on the spot, but I'm pretty sure this way it's not my word against the commissioners.
I feel like a kid and we're calling Dad in to straighten us out here.
I think it's fair to say that the suggestion of putting hotels in lieu of a jail.
The discussion was whether we would consider alternatives, looking at looking at hotels as an alternative. The discussion was directed that that was considered back in 2004 when we had a large work release population. And it was determined the cost to renovate something like that for work release of people coming in and out of jail every day would be too costly, and that's why we went to the minimum security jail facility. Discussions on whether we could move any of our present inmates to a hotel facility was that they're too high security and that such a design of a hotel could never be remodeled to incorporate the security necessary to house high security inmates.
Yeah, that answers
Thank
my
you, sir.
question, and I appreciate it. Thank you. And at the time, he answered my question. I wasn't recommending we do that. I was asking a question. It's a little bit different.
Mr. President.
Oh, hold on, John. Ron,
Yes, John.
you and I seem to remember this very differently.
Well, the sheriff just go right ahead. Go right ahead.
And the discussion about building a building one floor at a time and paying for it as we go. So there are many things that need to be openly and honestly discussed.
That was a question, John. I remember that question. Could we build it in segments? And at the time, you were somewhat supportive of that, as I recall. At least you said you were.
I don't know what alternate universe you're talking about, but anyway, Commissioner Plechnik.
Mr. President, the point I just want to draw from all of this debate is that whether you're talking about a hotel or a dilapidated building, renovation and bringing a building up to the security standards necessary is very, very costly. In fact, it is more costly than new construction. And that's why we've heard the recommendation from Buildings and Grounds and Telecommunications that maintain the current jail to build a new building. Not because anyone wants a Rolls Royce or the best in the business, although I certainly do want a better facility that takes more care of our inmates and provides more safety for our deputies, but because honestly, it is a more affordable alternative. If we try to renovate any old building, we will run into significant costs. That's why as we're going through downtown Painesville and we're looking at the historic buildings that are being renovated, there are significant tax credits for historic buildings. It's not possible to renovate those buildings as cheaply as to build a new one. And if we want to preserve that history, it requires even more money and investment to do so. Unfortunately, the jail is not a historic building, and no one wants to preserve its beautiful concrete and brick veneer. And so given that it is actually a more affordable task to build a new building, that's why we're getting these recommendations from Buildings and Grounds and Telecommunications. It's about finding the cheapest option that maintains our legal obligations and treats our inmates humanely while keeping our deputies and visitors to the jail safe. And that's where we have to keep our focus, because we don't get to decide whether or not there's a jail. We have to find the most affordable, humane, safe option to provide a jail. And so while, once again, I love debate, and I'm happy to be here for the next 8 hours, hey, I can go longer than that. I want to be focused on the real issue, which is how do we find the most affordable option? And I am not the director of buildings and grounds. I have not personally maintained the jail like the director of communications. I have never managed the jail as Sheriff Liam Bruno has, nor am I a judge who sees the soon-to-be guests of the jail on a daily basis in sentencing and hearings. But those individuals have all made their recommendations to us in addition to the K2M study and the previous study before it. So once again, I'm open to new information, but I also know in politics, next time means never. Some people will continuously say, give me more information, give me more information. You have to be able to make decisions based on the best available information. I'm open to more, but I also recognize that every day that passes, we're seeing heightened inflation. I also recognize that it's going to be increasingly challenging to line up good, skilled labor for this project, given that there are many other counties that are building or planning to build a jail that quite literally neighbor us. So we're in competition for those resources, and this is going to cost an increasing amount of money the longer time we wait. And so I can't wait to hear people say, well, why didn't you make a decision? Now it's $200 billion. That will be the discussion if we fail in our job and don't step up and get this done. And everyone will say, well, if I were the commissioner, I would have moved quickly and saved $100 million. That's exactly what everyone would say. And I want to be that commissioner who actually gets the job done to save that money so that we don't end up having to raise taxes on seniors to pay for a jail.
Hey, Mr. President, can I ask for a point of order?
No, sir, you may. No, sir, you may not.
Oh, please.
No, sir, you may not.
Okay, I thought we were on the public comment.
No, sir, you may not. So, if there's nothing further for
there
Paul and
is.
Mark.
There is. I just have to say real quickly here. Thank you, John. That was well said. I'm not against the tax increase because I have a personal vendetta against taxation.
I don't think
That's
anybody used the word.
absurd.
I don't think anybody used the word vendetta, sir.
You said personal. You have a personal.
I believe I used the word pride. But if I may go back and quote my notes.
But real quickly, okay.
Let's see. Hold on.
And
I believe I used the word personal pride and no taxes.
That's right. That's exactly what you said.
That's exact. Thanks.
But I'm not for a tax increase simply because of issues with pride. That's not the issue. The issue is that taxes, excessive taxes, hurt people. And I didn't take this job to hurt people. And that's one of the reasons I ask a lot of questions, and sometimes stupid questions. I'll be totally honest. This is a field that I'm not familiar with. As I sit here today, I'm learning a lot. And I've learned a lot from you in this arena as well. You're a general contractor, and I trust your expertise in many ways. I do. So, but I don't call people on the carpet simply for the questions that they ask. We have to be open to allowing folks to ask any questions they'd like to ask. I think that's reasonable, especially on an issue this important. We have to be willing to take even dumb questions, even from a fellow commissioner sometimes. And we need to consider each other's perspectives in a reasonable way. So that's it. Thank you.
Fair enough.
Go right ahead.
If there's nothing else for Paul and Mark, gentlemen, thank you so much for your participation and making yourselves available here today. And thank you for being such good sports. So,
Thank you, Commissioner.
thank you. And folks, if you want to take your seats back, thank you for accommodating probably the world's longest first public comment section. So you guys are welcome to stay, or you can run like heck. So thank you, gentlemen. Okay, now moving into the first public comment portion. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak? Thank you. Come on up, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. President. I'll keep this brief. I'll keep this to 5 minutes, but it is very important. I think you'll agree it's a very important.
Name and address.
David Black, Aspenwood Lane, Willoughby, Ohio. I know all three of you, and I appreciate your liberty-minded, conservative stance on philosophy and government.
Thanks.
I'm going to pass this. I'd like this for the records. What my topic here is to help us, if we can get a resolution from the county to apply to the General Assembly for redress of grievances to nullify a vaccine law which is unconstitutional. And I'll read off, I don't know who wants to put this in the record. And I have 3 copies for each commissioner.
If you could just give it to the clerk, please. Thank you.
But the easiest way for me to discuss is just read this off. It'll just take 5 minutes. And I think it's important. I think you'll agree in today's world it's very important. It's addressed to the Ohio General Assembly. I'll also send a copy to our new state senator from the area. No one might lost his name already. But it's petitioned the Ohio General Assembly for redress of grievances, Article 1, Section 3 of the Ohio Constitution. And I'm hoping the county, being an administrative arm of the General Assembly, can help facilitate this. Per the Ohio Constitution's Article 1, Section 3, we hereby, and I have 23 signatures, which I gave to the administrator over there, Kathy Russo. 23 signatures on this petition.
Jennifer Belcathy's out.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jennifer.
That's okay.
Thank you. We hereby petition the General Assembly of Ohio for the redress of grievances that the 1986 Childhood Vaccine Act violates the Ohio and the U.S. Constitutions. The right to trial, well, by the way, that Vaccine Act has taken away the right to trial, jury trial, if you're hurt by a vaccine. You have to go to a federal court. You cannot take your case to a jury, and the federal court would decide, and I'll explain that in a little bit. The right to a trial by jury in civil cases is one of the most cherished rights held by citizens of this country. For example, the Declaration of Independence enumerated specific abuses and usurpations by the King of Great Britain, having in direct object the establishment of absolute tyranny over the states. One itemized case of abuse was, and quote, for depriving us, in many cases, the benefit of trial by jury. So it's important enough for the founders of this country to itemize that in the Declaration of Independence. Patrick Henry, a member of the House of the Virginia House on June 5, 1788, stated the following objection at the Virginia Ratifying Convention of the original Constitution, which contained no Bill of Rights. He said, the rights of conscience, trial by jury, liberty of the press, all your immunities and franchises, all pretensions to human rights and privileges are rendered insecure if not lost by this change. Again, reiterating the importance of trial by jury. The 7th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution states, in suits in common law, when the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall otherwise be re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of common law. Article 1, Section 5 of the Ohio Constitution states the following. The right of trial by jury shall be inviolate, except that in civil cases, laws may be passed to authorize the rendering of a verdict by concurrence of not less than 3/4 of a jury. Interesting word in that whole thing was inviolate. I had to look at my 1828 dictionary to remind myself what that word meant. And it's a beautiful word. It says the obvious things are uninjured or unbroken, but the neat part of that definition was unprofaned, unpolluted. Are you going to profane the right to a jury trial? Are you going to pollute the right to a jury trial? That's exactly what they did when Congress passed that law. They took it away. They didn't pollute it, they took it away. So the importance of we're getting in this petition is the founders knew how important a jury trial was. Patrick Henry stated, I'm not going to sign on to this Constitution without the Bill of Rights, jury trial being one of those things. And here we let Congress in '86 pass a law taking it away. Okay, next paragraph. Any law made by the federal government or the state of Ohio that violates this explicit provision in the Constitution is an illegal law and should be rendered null and void. In 1986, Congress passed the National Vaccine Act, which includes the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. This violates both the U.S. and the Ohio Constitution by holding the vaccine industry, doctors, hospitals, and administrators harmless from civil suit. The law eliminates the right to a jury trial. Under the VICP, that's what's mentioned above, once a petition is filed with the U.S. Court of Federal Claims, it's assigned to a federally appointed special master. The special master is judicial officer who examines the evidence and adjudicates the claim. No jury is used. Standard rule of evidence do not apply. Total compensation paid over the life of this program has been $3.3 billion. claim payments are funded by a 75-cent excise tax on vaccines. This situation is exactly what our founders intended to prevent, as it's ripe for corruption by the powerful. So think about that. The entire vaccine industry, if they hurt you, if you take a vaccine and you're injured, you can't take it to a trial by jury, which Patrick Henry said, and the founder said, you've got to have that to have a free country. No. You go to a federal master appointed by the federal government. He'll determine it all by himself, and if they decide to award you some money, it's going to come out of U.S. tax dollars. And by the way, the footnote I use here, Commissioner Young will appreciate this, and I gave the document there. The reference of the evidence behind these things, where I say footnote 1, comes from a letter to Honorable Ron Young at the Ohio House of Representatives by Elizabeth Molnar, staff attorney, January 14th, 2016. That's when he was a state rep. He helped us try to pass laws which would maintain liberties in whether or not to choose the right to have a vaccine. So the last paragraph, we, the undersigned, therefore request that the Ohio General Assembly immediately strike down the unconstitutional provision of the aforementioned law that prevents trial by jury by declaring it null and void in the state of Ohio, and immediately reinstate every Ohio citizen's constitutional right to a jury trial should they be injured by a vaccine. And then some of you may have known, especially our law professor here, and probably all of you know, where nullification was used way back in the 1700s by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, and he justified it as a state's right. As we know from reminding ourselves of the Constitution, the 10th Amendment says any power not delegated to the federal government remains with the states. We all have to remember here, because the powers on high coming through CNN and Fox News will tell us we have no power, all the power is in Washington, and we're worthless. The states delegated power to the federal government. You guys are more powerful than the federal government. Only what you've delegated do they have authority to operate. So anything you did not delegate, they have no authority. And in the Alien Sedition Act, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison wrote a very good write-up where the states nullified that federal law because it violated the U.S. Constitution. So I'm asking you, as our local representatives, our liaison to the state of Ohio, if you could pass a resolution from the county of Lake County, pass it up to the Ohio General Assembly, and say, yeah, we do feel that this law has violated both the U.S. and Ohio constitutions, and we want to consider it null and void. I'd love to take questions if your thoughts on that.
For some backup information while we're here, do you have examples of other states that have done this?
On this particular law?
Yes.
No, I don't.
So this would be a first in the nation?
I don't know. I'm not aware. Unfortunately, it's been under the radar because up until the last 5 years, vaccines haven't been forced on people, so they've just sort of allowed it to slide under the rug. But now, as you see, the mandatory vaccines are becoming more and more prevalent, and it's time that we just have to say no more.
Yeah.
And when you read Patrick Henry's Anti-Federalist Papers, they made it very clear that you take away trial by jury, the oligarchs will, this country will turn into a tyranny. And we can see it happening right here. I mean, look at how beautifully they've rigged the system. If I'm in the vaccine industry and I make some product that I don't care if it hurts you or not, because if it does hurt you, if you get allergies from my vaccine, if you need an EpiPen from my vaccine, if you get autism from my vaccine, I'm going to make more money because I also own the drug company that'll treat the autism, that'll treat the EpiPen, that'll treat this. How beautiful would it be if I can be free of liability so we could just become zillionaires and have zero liability so the oligarchs can consolidate power. So we have to realize the only way to maintain freedom is to uphold what Patrick Henry and the founder said, and that's uphold right to a jury trial by a jury of their peers, because this system is so rigged. So rigged.
Commissioner Young, Commissioner Plechnik?
Any thoughts?
Well, the bill that I worked on was a little bit different than this, but it's the same theme. And that was simply that employers couldn't mandate the flu shot as a condition of employment.
Sure.
So just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
But this, I've got to look this over, and we should talk more about it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. President, first I second what Commissioner Young says. This is something that I want to review. I agree in principle. I will say again that this issue, like the last, does relate to powers over the head of this commission. And so even what you're asking for is a statement. And we need to review and consider in terms of how a statement could be made, assuming that all the commissioners agree, and in a way that would be effective. Because ultimately, this is federal and state government. The commissioners are just an arm of state government. We actually are not the General Assembly, which would wield any powers reserved under the 10th Amendment. One thing that we often have debated is that unlike city councils and trusteeships, we don't have home rule in Ohio, so we don't directly exercise the state's power. We're simply arms of the state. So just that clarification, we're not the deciders. So the discussion that we're having right now is whether or not this is a statement, a non-binding resolution that might be made.
Absolutely.
I do want to note that the Federal Court of Claims, I can't resist a history lesson. It's dangerous when you give a professor a microphone. The Federal Court of Claims is actually a very interesting creature of federal law. I came to know Judge Fran Allegra, who was a judge on the Court of Federal Claims, was a graduate of Cleveland Marshall before I became a professor. And he gave a very interesting presentation on its history. But ultimately, remember our favorite general from the Civil War who loved burning down every town in the South? Does anyone remember the name? Sherman. General Sherman. He was so enthusiastic that he burned down everyone's houses. Whether you were Confederate, Union, your farm, your house, it was toast. And so after the war, Congress tried to make people whole. Not surprisingly, everyone turned out to be a closet Union sympathizer. Oh, I was with you from the course, reimburse me. So people would actually go to Congress and would make their case for why they were on the Union rather than the Confederate side and ask to be reimbursed for the damage that the good general did. And this was time-consuming and controversial. And if there's anything politicians hate, it's time-consuming and controversial. So they created the precursor to the Court of Federal Claims to deal with the burning down of the South from their favorite general, but it grew into the court we have today. It's not an Article III court. The judges do not enjoy life tenure. It's what we call an Article I legislative court. And in theory, the Court of Federal Claims, it's justified in its status, exercises Congress's Article I legislative authority. Justice Scalia, rest his soul, was not a big fan of this, and the tax court was actually based on the Court of Federal Claims. It's another Article I legislative court, and I'll never forget seeing him months before he passed away at the tax court judicial conference at Duke University, where Scalia said, "It's been a real honor to present here, but as I said in my dissent in Freytag, you're all unconstitutional. I'm out." Rest his soul. So just a little background on the Court of Federal Claims that we're discussing for those back at home.
Very good, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate it.
Okay, continuing, Mr. Lima.
Well, good afternoon, Commissioners. Dave Lima, 7774 Litchfield Drive, Mentor. I have a very, very long list of items taken from the discussion held previously, but I'm only going to talk about one of them. First of all, I don't think anyone that I'm aware of is proposing that we do nothing about the jail. I think the question is, which you have raised over and over again, is do we renovate or do we build a new jail? In the 2016 reports that I saw, we talked, or the conclusion was that renovation could occur and would cost somewhere between $18 and $20 million. Now, that was done, I think, a number of years ago, and I would assume we would have some inflationary numbers, so maybe $20 to $30 million. And that those renovations would keep the jail in good condition for 25 years and be easily maintainable. Now, I haven't seen the 2019 estimate from
I'll put it down.
K2M.
I was about to go looking for it, sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. But is that estimate saying, as Commissioner Plesnik has said, $70 million for 10 years? I would like to review that particular document, and will make a request to Jason to get that. But I would second Commissioner Young's suggestion that we have some other estimates that are provided for renovation. We have some clear notion that it would be approximately $100 million for a new jail, but there's a great discrepancy between $70 million for 10 years and $30 million for 25 years. So, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Okay, continuing. Do we have anything else? Mr. Massey?
Well, it's getting late.
The sun hasn't set yet. We're good. Should we order dinner?
We might have to work a full day today. This is terrible.
Well, I wasn't expecting to talk about the jail, but I was, as you were discussing it, I was trying to figure out what's the possible revenue stream that we'd be looking at. We've got inside millage, outside millage. We've got a sales tax, state government grants. Is there any other revenue stream that I'm forgetting about that?
Gee, there's that $50 million that got our.
And that's a state grant, is that? Okay, state grant, right.
But if I may, though, I think we're putting the cart in front of the horse until we know exactly what we need, how it's going to be programmed. That's when you're going to see the funding sources revealing themselves. Be it, is it coming from treatment? Is it coming from the federal government? We've got a lot of talk about infrastructure. I know this last batch of federal money, jails were expressly prohibited from that, but there's an awful lot of pressure to do things that take care of the people, both those who are incarcerated and those who are working there. So those funding sources, once you have a better idea of what you're looking for, they start to open up. Yes.
As I understand it, if it were at $100 million, that the 1.1 mils on the inside millage, that would take care of the funding source, as I understand it. And I said, well, if it is 1.1 mils, that's $38.50 per 100,000. It's just the accountant in me that looks at that. So you could either do an inside, or we talk about having the voters weigh in. It could be an outside millage, and they would vote whether or not they want to spend the money. I just mentioned that. The other topic that I wanted to mention, because it's got a lot of moving parts, what I did was I had copies made for each one of the commissioners. It was exhibits A through J, I believe it was, so that when I'm talking about things, maybe it'll make some sense. I went down this rabbit hole when I found out that the county had $350 million invested. If you remember, I was asking the basic question.
When you say the county, I want to be abundantly clear, through the Lake County Treasurer. That's the authority having jurisdiction over those dollars. I want to be clear, because people look at the commissioners
and thinking that you've got 350. No, it is a total that is I guess, controlled by the treasurer, and that money is invested. I was just had the basic question: who has title to that? Who really, owns the money? What department is it? And we finally got an answer, and Mr. Matus was able to provide us with their funds report, and that was on my Exhibit A that I provided to you, so you can follow that. So when I had that Exhibit A, all I really did was I went down and I tried to determine where the money was at, and I found 3 items that caught my attention. One was the amount of money that Deepwood had in their 4 accounts, and that was like $65 million. There were 2 other accounts that caught my attention, and one was for $5.3 million that was held by the treasurer's office. The exhibit, I'm sorry, it is account number,
Or fund number.
fund number 894. It's called surplus over. And that would be on Exhibit D that I gave you, where I detailed those 2 unclaimed money accounts.
Okay.
All right, so we've got the $5.3 million that the treasurer has control over, and we also have another account that the auditor has, and that was $735,000, and that was entitled unclaimed monies.
I'm sorry, I hate to ask, what fund number was that?
That was 894.
890.
No, I'm sorry, 894 was the 5.3, and the 803 was the 735,000.
Thanks.
So when I found those amounts, what I did was I sent the records request to the treasurer's office, and I was told that I really need to, send the request over to the auditor's office for the 735. The $735,000 was unclaimed monies from a variety of sources. And when I sent the notification to the auditor's office, they, through the diligent work of Barb Hoja, they were able to clean up that whole account in I think it was about a week. They were able to determine where that money really should be. And as I understand it, if they're not able to return the money directly to an individual, they go to the courts, and the courts then will give them the right to turn that money back into the general fund. So Exhibit E from the Auditor's Department shows that $511,000 of the $735 was returned to the general fund. Are you with me so far? Is that okay? Does that make sense?
I'm just glad we got this much flat surface.
Okay.
I'd hate to be doing this at the old counter.
Let's go to the $5.3 million with the treasurer. That account represents overpayments for property taxes. I went to the treasurer's office to try to get some background to see what is being done with that $5.3 million. And I spoke to their chief deputy, and he brought out about a 6-inch binder of old computer printouts, and he said that money goes back to the 1980s. He did acknowledge that it was taxpayer money going back to the 1980s. And I said, well, why hasn't it been returned to the taxpayers? I was told that they're short-staffed. And I thought about that, and I said, that's not really acceptable. A week later, I went back to the treasurer's office to ask how they are doing in trying to resolve the 5.3 million, getting it back, and I was told by the chief deputy that basically they're not talking to me and I have to go to the prosecutor's office. So whenever I hear that, whenever I hear a body is shutting down interested, taxpayers, I get very concerned. I spoke to Mr. Prosecutor Colson after the Budget Commission meeting, and I'll get into that in a little detail, but in finishing up on the 5.3 million, I asked Mr. Colson about the account, and he told me that he only learned of the account a couple of months ago. And then I said to him, well, Prosecutor Colson, that money needs to go back to the taxpayers. And he said, absolutely, it needs to go back to the taxpayers. I said, however, if you cannot determine after this lengthy period of time who really owns the money, then it needs to go to the court, and the court needs to decide that 5.3 million goes back into the general fund. I said to Mr. Colson, I said, we're talking about $100 million for a jail, and we may have $5.3 million sitting here that should be in the general fund. That'd be 5% of the jail. To that response, Prosecutor Colson says, oh no, it's definitely going back to the people, and there will be very little money going to the general fund. I had to stand back and I say, well, how does he know that? If we haven't determined who owns the money since 1980, they're short-staffed, how would the prosecutor know? Now, perhaps he's got a magic answer. I don't know on that. But that has me concerned to the point that I consider that a scandal, gentlemen, that since the 1980s, treasurer after treasurer, and the current treasurer for the last 8 years, they haven't done anything about it. I'd like you to think about how you could resolve that. And by maybe the resolution is the money goes into the general fund. If that's it, okay. But at least we can get off Mr. Matus's books and use that money for the betterment of
Mr. Matus's books, what do you mean?
in the fund report. It's the accountant. He's keeping track of it. All right, he's keeping track of all the funds. So that's an accounting joke for all us bean counters. So he's keeping track of that, and if we can move it into the general fund, then it can be used by the people. The third item is the Budget Commission. Exhibit C is what I sent to the Lake County Budget Commission, and for the people watching it, I know you know that's made up of the prosecutor, the treasurer, and the auditor. The auditor, by statute, is the permanent secretary. I asked them to look at Deepwood finances and determine if those cash reserves that they had of the almost $65 million now, is it appropriate for them to have that, or have they just perhaps taken too much money out of the community? This is not I don't mean to say that they're doing a bad job or anything. It has nothing to do with the capabilities of the Deepwood and their staff and the population that they serve. I'm just looking out for the taxpayers and the seniors specifically, that we can't continue to take out the lifeblood out of the community. And if we have, I was thinking that if we have some accounts that are too much, then perhaps they need to reduce the property taxes until the accounts for Deepwood are more appropriate. There was a meeting on August 1st by the Budget Commission, and I had my recorder there, and I did record the entire meeting. And if you would like to see that, it is on Lobbyists for Citizens. You can see the entire meeting. The Deepwood Board was there, and they presented their projections, to the commission. Let me back up a little bit. Prosecutor Colson, before the meeting even started, he recused himself because of his statutory authority. He is the attorney of record for Deepwood. So he, from the very first part of it, he said he is not going to comment nor vote if there was a vote. So there was really only 2 of the 3 that were really in attendance in the meeting. Prosecutor Colson just sat there and said nothing. What bothered me, and something that I didn't know, and I even told Auditor Galloway at the end, at right about the 42-minute mark of a 47-minute meeting, Auditor Galloway said that there is no statutory authority for the Budget Commission to reduce any property taxes for the Deepwood Center. And I said, well, I really didn't know that, and I really appreciate being educated. But the more that I thought about it, and when I was at home, and I said, that doesn't seem right, because if the Budget Commission cannot reduce any of the taxes, it's really pointless to meet. Because all it really would be I'll use Deepwood again, or the political subdivision. They would just say, well, this is what it is, and we're going to go with it. And you, Budget Commission, don't have the authority to reduce the property taxes. And I found the Deepwood has 2 continuous levies. And I know, and everybody should know by now, that continuous levies are forever levies. So they really don't have to be responsible to the taxpayers, and I find that objectionable. They do a fine job, but this is dealing with dollars. So I did some additional investigation. And I found the Exhibit G is the county budget, the county commissioner's handbook. It's Exhibit G, and I refer you to page 5 and page 6 of that Exhibit G. And it says in there, as it relates to the County Budget Commission performs the following mandatory functions. And point number 4 there, it says, it reduces the rate of a tax levy if the tax budget does not clearly show the need for the full proceeds of such a levy. I can read more, but that seems to counter, in my mind anyway, but I'm just an average citizen here, just a humble peasant here trying to figure out what the Ohio Revised Code or this county handbook is saying. But when I read that, I think that, in my mind, that contradicts what Auditor Galloway was saying. I also would like you to go to Exhibit H. And I highlighted, I think it's on the 3rd page, this was dealing with Section 5705.341 of the Ohio Revised Code. And on the 3rd page that I highlighted, it says, nothing in this section or any section of the revised code shall permit or require the levying of any rate of taxation, whether the 10 mil limitation or, and here's the important point, whether the levy has been approved by the electors of the taxing district. Yep.
I don't have a page 3 in my...
Oh, okay. Again, let me repeat that for you, Commissioner Young. On that page 3, where I underlined whether the levy has been approved by the electors of the taxing district. Again, that to me, that seems to contradict what Auditor Galloway was saying. Now, this is not a slam on Auditor Galloway at all. I'm trying to bring it to the attention of the people that Auditor Galloway said that he did send all of the commissioners a notice of the Budget Commission meeting. And so that tells me that the commissioners have some authority over the Budget Commission then.
Oh, let me interrupt you.
Yeah, okay.
The commissioners have no authority over the Budget Commission. That is a public meeting. We have the same rights as the general public. We have a right to hear, not be heard. We have no authority to speak at that. We have no control over that. I need to be abundantly clear, and I'm looking to legal if I say anything that's not correct.
You've said nothing incorrect.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so you'd just be another member of the public sitting there, right?
That would be our only standing. We would, just like anybody, another member of the public.
Okay, so I see this is going south in a hurry here, because if you have no power, if what I am saying is correct, I think what you're telling me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you're funneling me into the court system to try to, how am I, as an average citizen, how am I to refute what Auditor Galloway is saying if he says he has no statutory authority, and I think he does? Where do I go to get an adjudication of that to make sure I'm right or wrong?
Commissioner Young.
I would say, first of all, I would like you to go back to Mr. Galloway and talk to him with all these issues on the table. He's still new at that job, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And he may take some time to get up to speed in every area. This could be one of them where he simply isn't fully aware of all of his powers at this point. I'd appreciate it if you could take that.
I'm certainly willing to do that, yes.
If I may, just, Mr. Galloway was following the legal advice of the Lake County prosecutor.
Oh.
And the Lake County prosecutor is the same person we're going to go to. So,
One of his assistants, and I'll be glad to speak when appropriate.
if you would, please, if you have something you could
Sure.
contribute to add to this conversation. it'd be
First of all, I
appreciated,
did run into Mr. Massey outside today, and he was kind enough to give me the heads up on his
sir.
discussion.
When you ran into him, were there witnesses? When you ran into him, were there witnesses? Or, I'm sorry, it was a puerile attempt at humor.
He was
Given all the concentrated.
He was very kind to give me a heads up, and I said, "Oh, by the way, I dropped off some packets at the commissioners, and I'm going to be making a little presentation." And I said, "Can I get a preview?" And he talked me through the issues. So I was at least able to print the statutes out that apply here. Let me start out with the fact that this Board of Commissioners has no authority over the Budget Commission. The Budget Commission is what we call a creature of statute. It's made up of the treasurer, the prosecutor, and the auditor. They meet the first Monday in August every year. And what their charge is to do is to make sure every political subdivision, the budgets that are submitted are accurate, not too much money is being collected, that enough money is being collected. There are several dynamics going on here that they're looking at. Now, under the law, and there's several statutes that I'll get into, especially that 5705.341, which you point out, which when I first saw that, quite frankly, I agreed with. I had that same mindset. But 5705.31 talks about the Budget Commission and what they have to do. And I'm not going to read the whole statute, but the pertinent part says, the Commission shall ascertain that the following levies have been properly authorized, and if so authorized, shall approve them without modification. And it goes on to list. It says the following levies. There's 3 separate types of levies listed, and the one that we're talking about here that's pertinent is subsection A, all levies in excess of the 10 mil limitation. So
That's the outside millage.
any outside millage, which is a voter-approved levy. So, again, the commission shall ascertain whether the following levies have been authorized, properly authorized, and if so authorized, the pertinent words here, shall approve them without modification. So that's the start of it. And I want to put on a side note, there's a lot of case law out there on this type of issue. The commission's job, or budget commission's job, is not to microanalyze the various subdivision budgets. It's not even really there to make judgment calls on whether is this a good expenditure or not. It's just to make sure that it's been properly authorized. Okay? Now you get to the 5705.341 statute that you referenced. And again, looking at this, nothing in this section, and I hate to be redundant, but I think it's necessary, nothing in this section or any section of the revised code shall permit or require the levying of any rate of taxation, whether the levy has been approved by the electors of a taxing district, I think part of the sentences here, unless such rate of taxation for the ensuing fiscal year is clearly required by a budget of the taxing district. So that gives the impression that they have the Budget Commission has the ability to look at this and say, wait a minute, that's not required. So there's been case law or lawsuits over this. In 1984, the Supreme Court of Ohio weighed in on this issue. And they were looking at, the court was looking at this somewhat differing statutory framework between .31 shall approve without modification, and then the other .341 that you appropriately pick out, and they held the following. And this is out of State XREL Fairfield County Board versus Fairfield County Budget Commission, 1984. Quote, we conclude that voter approval of a levy properly placed upon the ballot pursuant to RC 5705 constitutes an approved budget as a matter of law, thus satisfying the provisions of RC 5705.341. So they're saying that a voter-approved levy absolutely satisfies the 5705.341. That's the law on this. And I do appreciate you giving me the heads up, because I sure as heck wouldn't have been able to take that off the top of my head. But that is the state of the law. Is there litigation on these types of issues? Yes. But that's the pronouncement.
Jay, if I could have a copy of that Supreme Court ruling, that would be great, because I want to close the loop on this.
I can give you a citation. I don't have a copy of it, but yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, just one other item, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I keep getting requests about, or statements about election fraud in the state of Ohio. I keep getting roped into, helping people out, try to decide whether or not there's any election fraud. I think you all know that I'm a big fan of Lake County, Board of Elections, and I'm not believing any of this, but I think it is also important or imperative that we as citizens, we do help out if someone is trying to make a statement that is totally false. So in this item G, what I wanted to show you, that I did receive a report, Ohio Election Analysis, by somebody by the name of Seth Kishel, that, and the map that they showed, yes.
G is the...
I'm sorry, J. Did I say G? I'm sorry, I meant J.
Or perhaps misunderstood.
J. The last item.
Got it, thanks.
Okay, the map that they provided on this report shows that Lake County, really, there's some issues, according to this gentleman, about, voter fraud in Lake County. And I'm going to make it my mission here to disprove that, because it is not fair to the workers or the leadership of Lake County Board of Elections that their reputation be besmirched like that. So to that end, what I have done is I have been working with Mr. Ross McDonald, and he has been, forthcoming in providing any and all, records that I needed. And so I did just send him, and I did hand-delivered a records request for 18 records that the file that he sent us, showed that he recorded that information. So I am going to do the necessary legwork to prove that all of these are legitimate voters, and so that I can, tell this group they're way out and, in left field when they say that there's some election fraud in Lake County. I just there's nothing for the commissioners to do on this. I just wanted to report to you that we're trying to be, good citizens, and we're trying to do the necessary legwork that shows that this report is wrong. So that is my case. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for labeling that, and this would have been impossible to follow without that. So,
Commissioner?
Thank you. Yes.
If I could just, while Mr. Massey's still here, just
yes,
make some commentary in terms of
absolutely, sir. Please.
The overage fund in the treasurer's office. We absolutely agree with you. All of that money should go back to the taxpayers, but due diligence has to be conducted to the best ability, and then we would have to approach the court and hope that the court makes a determination that money should go to the general fund. Now, this overage fund, my understanding is that Ms. Lorraine Fendi, is the one that discovered this several years back. I don't have intimate, detailed knowledge of it, but my understanding is she's the one that discovered this issue. And my understanding further is that there was software implemented in the treasurer's office which has stopped the bleeding, if you will. There's no more issues with that. We're looking in the back rear view mirror, and we got to get back to the 80s on it. You're absolutely correct.
It would have been nice if Ms. Fendi or the deputy director would have sat down and talked to an average citizen and solved the problem. But what they don't understand is when they shut off the average citizen from any communication or an explanation, that all of a sudden raises red flags with me. And so that I appreciate you letting me know, and I will make sure that the public knows that if you say that Lorraine Fendi found that, I will tell people that Lorraine Fendi did her job, and when she found it, now I'm just saying that if they're short-staffed, I'd like to see somebody working weekends and nights to resolve that so that we can get the money where it belongs.
I just want to make the point, though, the problem is the bleeding is stopped, and now we have to look back and go backwards. You mentioned Mr. Colson's recusal from the Budget Commission, and that was not during the annual Budget Commission hearing. That was during the developmental disability.
Yes.
So that was a separate. Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
The CCAO handbook, we're aware of that. We've seen it, and that was part of our analysis, quite frankly, in coming up with what the law is on that.
Okay, again, if you could send me, if you can send me the link to the Supreme Court, that would be great.
And then finally, again, I want to reemphasize that Auditor Galloway was following the advice of counsel when he made the statement that he did at the developmental disabilities hearing.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Question for Dave. Quick question. Is there any kind of a methodology established for those unclaimed funds? Otherwise, what steps would we have to take here, I guess, to try to contact the folks we have addresses for that are those monies belong to?
Well, we're
before
talking.
we could turn it into the turn it over to the general fund.
You're talking about the overage fund in the treasurer's office.
That's right, 5 million or so.
The steps that have to be taken are going through what I understand is a very long list, which I believe you did get to see.
I did get to see the list, yeah, it's quite thick. It's about 6 inches thick of computer printouts.
And you got to match up the names of the people who are on there and try to locate them. Some people may be still at the same address. And some, just so people understand, sometimes people will pay their own property taxes, not realizing their mortgage company is putting the taxes in. And my understanding is that's partially how this came about. But Commissioner Young, to answer your question, it would be methodical and mandatory due diligence to go through that list, do the best they can to find out who's out there and get the money back to them. And my understanding is that they have been doing that and the money has been getting back to the taxpayers, but I don't want to speak on behalf of the treasurer because I don't, again, have the detailed, intimate knowledge of what's gone on so far.
Is there a state statute that lays out a methodology?
Yes, there is, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but everything's statutory.
Could you get us a copy of that
I will do
statute?
that. Yes, sir.
And once we've attempted these things, is there a time frame there? Otherwise, once we've gone through those methodologies, how long would we have to wait before we turn that money over to the general fund? If you could find that out as well, or maybe there isn't a specific time frame. I don't know.
Yeah, again, that would involve court involvement. That's a tough thing for me to put a time frame on other than...
So it has to go through the court no matter what?
Yes.
I see.
Thank you.
And just to flesh that out just a little deeper, though, there needs to be what I think we call an exhaustive effort to assure the courts that every rock, every nook, every cranny has been diligently searched.
Yes.
Regardless of the cost investment to do that if we're going to try to release those funds. Because there's not an automatic mechanism in existence legislatively. We'd have to go through the court for relief to resolve that.
In that particular situation, yes.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Okay, anyone else in the audience wishing to address the board in our first public comment portion? Okay, moving on to the agenda. Madam Clerk, first item, please.
In the engineer's office, resolution authorizing final approval and acceptance of a 3-year maintenance surety for Fairway Pines Phase 3A subdivision in Painesville Township.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
In the Utilities Department, resolution increasing an appropriation in Lake County Department of Utilities Solid Waste Recycling Fund.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution increasing an appropriation in Lake County Department of Utilities Sewer Operating Fund.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution increasing appropriations in Project Fund 554, Red Creek Sewage Improvements 280S for the Lake County Department of Utilities.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
I'm always impressed by how quickly our clerk reads the resolutions.
She practices. She's a professional.
It's late.
She should have that memorized, I believe. Go ahead.
Okay, I believe it's been regularly moved and seconded. No actual discussion with that in mind. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
In the Commissioner's Office, resolution reappointing Kenneth R. Keener as a member of the Board of Trustees of the Lake County Library District for a 7-year term expiring July 6, 2028.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution accepting a grant and authorizing execution of a 2020 Department of Justice grant, subgrant number 2020 ARBX 0041, in the amount of $146,557.88 between the Lake County Board of Commissioners on behalf of the Lake County Sheriff's Office, effective through March 31st, 2021.
Move to approve.
Second.
discussion? I think it's fair to say this was a last-minute addition because of some timing issues. Sheriff, did you or your team want to have anything to add to this? Thank you.
Good afternoon. Yeah, it's kind of due tomorrow at 4.
Name for
I'm sorry, Jeff Sherwood,
There
Chief
you
Deputy,
go.
Lake County
Come
Sheriff's
on.
Office.
You never
I thought you
give
knew me.
credit. We gotta
I thought
get
you knew me
you-
already. No.
It's the back of your head. Come on now.
It's it's a grant that's basically a reimbursement for medical costs for inmates that we were housing that should have been sent to prison during COVID. And this is just our reimbursement costs for housing and for medical expenses.
And this is a good example, though, of diligence on the part of the sheriff's office and, again, the administrative staff, which we've heard a great deal about. This is another example of making sure that every dollar that should come back to Lake County is. Is that a fair assessment?
It is.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Any further discussion or questions for the chief? Very
Mr.
good.
President,
Sir.
I would just say we continue to see how our hardworking staff go above and beyond to bring the dollars back to Lake County. Anyone who tunes into these meetings sees how they apply for every grant, every dime, every dollar, and we thank them for that because it lowers the ultimate tax burden on our residents.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. If there's nothing further, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik?
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck?
Yes.
In the Finance Department, resolution approving payment of bills as listed on the Commissioner's Approval Journal in the amount of $1,126,167.54.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik?
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck?
Yes.
Resolution approving purchase orders as listed on the Commissioner's Purchase Order Approval Journal in the amount of $320,353.42.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik?
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck?
Yes. Okay, this brings us to our departmental reports portion of our meeting. Utilities, Randy?
Just a reminder, we have our final special collection for 2021 a week from Saturday, August 14th. It's going to be our electronics and television collection combination of those two.
Very good.
At the
Thank you.
fairground from 8 to 2.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Anything else for utilities? Thank you. Moving on, Job and Family Services. Suzanne?
No report today, Commissioners. Thank you, though.
Wow, come on. I thought you had some nice thing. No? Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am. County Administrator Jason Boyd.
Good afternoon still, Commissioners. Briefly, I just want to have Corey Vojak from our Workforce Development Agency come up. He has a brief announcement of an upcoming event. So, Corey.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for having me.
Corey, thank you for joining us today.
I'm excited to announce our Lake County team from Ohio Means Jobs here is conducting their first in-person summer job fair coming up next week on August 11th from 12 to 3. We are hosting it at the Menor Ice Arena, and there's going to be over 25 employers involved. We're really excited for this opportunity to finally connect job seekers and residents of Lake County with employers here that are eager to find those employees to work. The nice thing about our event, we are conducting this in a hybrid model, meaning that we are still utilizing our virtual job fair software. So in the two-part event, the next day the event will be held on Thursday the 12th, where job seekers and employers will be able to log on online and use the software to connect through the job fair platform that we have been utilizing through the past year. And so it's a great opportunity to connect even more job seekers and employers on this one. Giving the room restraints to the ice arena, there will be more employers on the day after event virtually, up to 32 at this point. And so very happy and eager for my whole team to conduct this event, and I'm looking forward to stopping by and also helping out in talking with employers and connecting everyone with these opportunities that we have.
So how'd you arrive at that location for a host site?
We've used the location before, and to great success. It accommodates very well to the amount of employers that we can put in there, and it's an easy location, centrally located for job seekers to find, ample parking, and it just adds up to being a very successful place to hold a job fair.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Anything else for Corey? No? All right. Well, thank you again. Thank you for your patience also today. It's much appreciated. And so how are you liking the job? Come on, how many months now? This is what, 2 months now you've been on the job?
Oh, no, a few weeks.
A few weeks? Come on. Seems like forever.
That's what today's meeting feels like.
Oh, that's what our administrator thinks that that's what today's meeting feels like. Oh, seriously, you doing good?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Good to see you up here. Much appreciated. You're welcome to stay or go home to your family, whichever's
much appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
And just briefly, Commissioners, yesterday, as I noted last week, I was in Central Ohio with 9 other county administrators, John Leitch from CCO, just kind of a brainstorming session. A lot of the counties, as it relates to ARP, are in the same boat that Lake County is. Everyone is hesitant to spend a nickel until we get the final guidance because the guardrails are so darn tight. They're not meeting a lot of the needs of the counties, i.e. capital infrastructure, vertical infrastructure, regardless of the type of structure. Obviously, water, sewer, broadband is permitted, so we're going to keep working that angle. Also, the economic development component. You know, we have employers, companies here that are looking to expand capital, machinery, and land, and right now those are not eligible expenses. So we're in the same boat as a lot of communities. We're not getting a lot of luck from the treasurer on when the final rules will be published. But what we did ask of CCAO and the Cliff Note version is if they would issue on behalf of the counties as our representative an RFP to find us a legal professional where we would have essentially a hotline where we could call with ARP specific questions and have confidence that the interpretation of Treasury rules are correct. So that's one of the action items we asked of CCAO as our lobbying agency. So I'll keep you abreast as that moves forward. Thank you.
Excellent. No, I appreciate your taking the time to participate in that. That's, again, a commendation of how well regarded you are in the state of Ohio. We are very fortunate to have you on our team. Thank you, sir. Anything else for our administrator now that he's walked to the back of the room and is trying to sit down? No, you're fine. Are we good? Okay. All right, and with that, finance.
I'll pass.
Okay, no report. Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk.
Yes, I just want to mention the next regular commissioners meeting is going to be next Thursday, August 12th, and we will be back at 10 o'clock a.m. next week.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. Anything for our clerk? Okay, moving on to legal, sir.
No reports, Commissioner.
Thank you, and again, thank you for preparing before the meeting. That was much appreciated. Okay, do we have any old business to come before the board? Any old business? Okay, new business. Do we have any new business? Very good. Okay.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't just give a brief congratulations to all the volunteers and workers for the Lake County Fair. Right. I know that we're working on more formal recognition, but nonetheless, the biggest fair in 169 years. We're very proud of our Lake County Fair Board, the kids in 4-H, everyone who came together to make it such a successful event. So just a quick shout out and a thank you for a record-breaking fair that really is done with an incredible amount of volunteer work.
Well said. Thank you, sir. Okay, if there's no other old or new business, this brings us to our second public comment portion. Do we have anyone in the audience wishing to address the board at this time? See no takers? Very good. Okay, moving on, we do have a request for executive session. There are 2 topics: legal pending litigation and personnel discipline. There'll be no business to be conducted afterwards. Do we have a motion to adjourn for reasons so stated?
So.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Pletchnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes, thank you. All right, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.